Good morning, Sophia. How's it going?
Hello, it's going well. Still drinking my coffee,
Hey, me too, man.
but I can't lie. I've been up since 5:30, so out and about
Wow.
already.
Mm, man, Jesus don't get up that early, does he?
Well,
You get up before Jesus gets up. Shit. All right. Well, today we're going to actually be talking a little bit about some of the deeper things of reality. So we're going to jump into, um, as the title suggests, the problems with all metaphysical positions, because we oftentimes you know, prop up one over the other or are constantly, pointing out the weaknesses of different metaphysical views. So this time we wanted to just kind of go over all the problems with all of them, and even including the ones we may share, and then we can kind of do a comparison to see why would we choose one over the other, based on, you know, the problems themselves, but also the possible solutions, because we'll go over some of the solutions if we can. And again, if you have any ideas in the comments section, leave any sort of comments that can refine or adjust our view, what the issues may be, if there's more issues than we've actually pointed out, or if there's solutions we didn't really point out, or if we just misframed the whole position altogether. If you have any opinion or view on it, leave a comment, man, and we'll address it, and we'll maybe even spin a whole show out of it if it's interesting enough. But the metaphysical positions that we understand exist out here in the world. So there's the more popular one, which is materialism slash physicalism. And then there's idealism, then there's panpsychism, and all of these fall under the umbrella of either a dualism, which is two substances, or non-dualism, which is just a monism, or one, just one substance is the nature of reality. And then, and I almost forgot, we're going to actually go into this too, is the simulation hypothesis. This is very popular today among community philosophers, in the community. Um, Simulation pop and panpsychism, both of these views are very spoken about these days. They're like hot topics in the philosophical community because, with quantum computers and with AI and everything that's coming up, naturally you can already see the simulation hypothesis take form. It doesn't even take that much of an imagination to actually see how we may be living in a simulation. Are you familiar with most of these positions, Sophia, deeply?
yeah, pretty
Yes.
much.
Yep. That's because that's all we fucking talk about every weekend, right?
Yeah,
We haven't learned it
we
by
sleep
now.
on it, we dream about it. We can't
Mm-hmm.
live without it.
Mm-hmm. We talk about all
It's
these
like crack.
things. Yeah, and it's so funny how these things, especially between, and I've heard this said, he made a funny thing about it. I saw a thing the other night on uh uh man, what's the name of his channel? Theories of Everything, and I just forget his name for some reason, which is horrible. I should know his name. He's very popular physicist. He's a physicist, theoretical physicist, and philosopher. And he was given a lecture at a Catholic school, and he was talking about materialism and idealism, and he was saying, and he goes, "What I didn't understand is how contentious you guys are." Like he said, if you go to like academic, and he goes, not even academic, like you see a lot of passion about between idealism, materialism, like they go at it hard. He says, but it's not only even there, it's even online on Facebook and stuff like that. People have sunk their feet into these positions, And he said it's almost like the Crips versus the Bloods, man. It's like if you're an idealist, you're gonna fucking stay at your idealism, and if you're materialist, you're gonna stick to that, and you're gonna constantly hate on the other side, and it's like you're both sides think they're so clearly right, and he goes, it's like the Crips and the Bloods type shit. He goes, especially in academia. But I wonder why that is. Why is it those two things? Like the other ones, people talk about, and they don't have a problem with the differences and talking about where the problems are. He goes, but if you dare tell materialism about their problems or ideal, oh, it becomes a big thing. Why is that, I wonder?
Well, I think it's because once you invested in something your entire life, it's hard to say, oh shit, I might have been wrong my entire life. And you done based everything on that, the way that
Hmm.
our systems are set up, everything, it's based on, mostly materialism. So to challenge that means you may have to reconsider, you may have to let that go, you may have to start over from scratch. And a lot of people aren't willing to do that because they have seemingly benefited and profited from that viewpoint. And let's take, for example, the male and female issue, right? Especially in the West, we see this gender war, right? Which is another example of that duality. And it's always about one side trying to dominate the other side. And let's say if males have benefited from dominating women, even though they really don't benefit from that, but let's just say they are because that's what they think, you know, um, they don't want to let go of that control. It's all about control. When in reality, the two should be working hand in hand and there should be a balance. But a lot of people just aren't willing to let go of that control. They want to feel like, at least they want to feel like they're in control, even though they may not be really, but that's what it feels like. And they don't want to give that up. It's about control. That's
Yeah,
what I think.
that makes sense. That makes sense. Kind of like religion. Um, people get into their religions and then they don't want to get out of it because it's all they know and it's what they've based their whole life invested on, though that sort of idea. And I think it even breaks down even deeper than I think materialism, idealism is sort of the um, the more shallow side of it, I guess. And the deeper is the dualism versus non-dualism. And that's where the real problem comes in because with dualism, we get to point the finger at the other and we get to blame our problems on the other. We get to solve our problems by destroying the other. Um, so it's always that sort of, and we can work with that because we're all used to that. We're used to a world of others, a world of other
Yeah, but
things, and we
and as
all
long as
fall
you're
into that. Yeah,
as long as you can just destroy the other, you feel like you're in control. There's a lack of self
yeah,
accountability. There's a lack of change, because why do I have to change if I can just make you go away? If I can just
right,
dominate you, why should I have to? There's no incentive of to push change, because why should I? I have all the power. I got all the money. I'm the man. I'm in control. I'm in charge, you know?
yeah. That's a powerful feeling. And the other thing too is, I'll be honest with you. I personally, it's easy to succumb to that. No one is kind of immune to that issue. Like for me, like sometimes if I don't feel like I'm addressing the other, or if I'm doing something about the other side, then I'm kind of being irresponsible. I feel like if there's something I'm going through, a problem I'm going through, and I need to fix it, then I need to figure out what the cause is. And so I have to go through the chain of causes and figure out where did my problem start? Where did this whole shit begin? What did I do wrong or what do I need to address? to get at this other thing that's causing the problem. And we do that daily, every day, whether it's a small thing or a large thing. We're always dealing with some cause that caused us or potentially is going to cause us some trouble down the line. And that means we have to intuitively understand that, you know what, the way logic works is cause and effect. So we have to look at what could potentially cause me problems right now, or what is potentially causing me problems right now. How can I fix it? And so we automatically get into this damn dualistic thinking like, oh, I've got to address this other thing here instead of looking at maybe the deeper thing, which is maybe I'm the cause of my problems. Maybe the common denominator is
I
all in
think,
me. Hmm?
yeah, and because I think that some of those problems are just flat out made up. You know what I'm saying? Because like,
Mm-hmm.
why do you feel that you have to have billions and billions while you're okay with someone else not having anything and barely surviving and starving? And why is that a problem for you to begin with, to not be a hoarder and not have more than I mean less than everyone? I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Mm-hmm.
what's the problem here? Is that some kind of self-created problem, or is that some kind of lack mentality that you're forever afraid of any type of suffering, that you have to always put yourself in a position of control, make sure that you could never, experience any kind of hardship? Is that what it is? I think a lot of it is fear-based lack mentality that leads to such controlling, greedy behavior, a
Mm-hmm.
fear of suffering, a fear of loss.
Yeah, all that fear. And it's based on experiences we've had and shit. And and it's like, I embrace duality myself. Like a lot of people sort of like look down on it. You're either going to look down on duality or non-duality, one of the two. I don't look down on either one of them. I embrace both of them as very real in their own way. Like there's a deeper truth, the non-duality truth, which is very valuable, and it can be the root of really solving all of your problems ultimately. But at the same time, you have to deal with them dualistically in a dualistic experience. And so you have to work within that experience. Not You can't really just say, "Oh, non-duality and all your problems go away." It doesn't work that way.
No, it's kind of like I'll describe it in my LFM model when I'm talking about Lucifer, the light bringer, and then Jesus Christ. And both of them are referred to in the Bible as the morning star. And you got to ask yourself, like, why do they have the same title if they're supposed to be arch enemies? Well, I think
Mm,
it's safe to assume that materialism is a part of the process, but it's the catalyst that kind of throws us and pushes us into a higher way of being. It's
right.
just evolution, it's part of the process. So we're not saying that the materialism is false or physicalism, and that's the
Hmm.
beauty of my model. You don't have to deny that. It's all part of it. But at the end of the day, we are meant to transcend duality. That's just painfully obvious, because it would be a never ending cycle of, you know, what we're seeing, the division, one
Yeah.
canceling out the other.
Yeah, we've had this discussion too informally, is that nature, reality, the greater mind, however you want to define it, has sort of chosen that oneness, love is really the solution, and it's really the end point. It's the end game. It's where everything's moving to. It's like evolution in nature is selecting for cooperation over division and selfishness. We even talked about how,
Yeah,
like
and
the
we learned that.
humanity,
We
yeah,
learned that.
like we learned it, and we're even traumatized by it all, and it's forged us to be the kind of people we are. I mean, you think about all the things we've had to come together as a people to to fighting it. We had to come together to fight the ice age. We had to come together to find food
Right.
and get our food and build our clothes and things to share so we can survive and help each other. And even we had Neanderthals, these people from the outside, giants that would come in and try to eat us, and we had to come together to defeat that problem, which was even a miracle that we were able to do that. And yet,
But
out
we
of
did
all
it
of
with our
this,
humanity and coming
yeah,
together as in unity. And time we see that if when there's zero cooperation, species die out. And the
yep,
Neanderthals, as I understand it, they were actually a completely different species. So they were human, but a different species. And from what I gathered, they just uh, evolved completely different
yeah,
from the other humans. And at the end of the day, they were more ferocious. They ate their own a lot of times, and they even hunted humans or whatever. But they were masters of war, right?
hmm,
But they died out. Like
yep.
they died out.
And they were very spiritual minded. Like they had their own, um,
Rituals.
traditions, rituals around
Yeah.
all of that stuff. Like they made it into, like for them, from their perspective, they were kind of quote unquote doing God's work, or maybe they were sort of mystical in their own way. And they were,
Superior.
yeah. But the problem is that nature selected against that. Nature decided, you know what? You've had your time. It was a great run. It worked for you. You chose that tool and it worked for you for a while, but now it just ain't, it's just played out, man. You
Well, the
know?
reason why I believe is like that one video I had watched, I forget this guy's name, but he's pretty accurate about things. That he was basically saying that wherever the Neanderthals showed up, humans started dying out, because they're
Yeah.
such warmongers. And so it's like if you allow that to spread, you'd end up wiping out all of humanity at some point, and all you'd have left is Neanderthals, and then they would end up eating each other too. So it's just self destructive in the long run. We need diversity. Diversity is necessary for evolution. And then there seems to be always this one group that thinks that it could sustain itself on everyone else without destroying everyone else and themselves. And it's just not, that's not how it works. And nature has dictated that over and over again. So I think it's about time that we learn our lesson.
Yeah. And it's like we were reading that article about how these scientists want to clone these Neanderthals and bring them back to life. And it's like, why would you want to do, like, we were lucky to get rid of them the first time. Like, can you
Right?
imagine
Like,
if
what the
can you
fuck? They
can you
nearly took out
imagine?
all of humanity. Goddamn.
Yeah, you miss them.
And these Neanderthals probably gonna be on steroids because now we got AI and all kinds of technology. Like,
Nuclear
fuck,
weapons. Like,
what you're
oh,
trying to do?
we're gonna have
Good
fun with
idea.
this.
Yeah, let's.
Yeah, I
That's
like
just
this world.
you know,
They're gonna love this
it
world.
just shows. It just really shows greed causes irrational thinking. I mean, greedy, lack mentality people will literally create some of the worst weapons of mass destruction just to stay on top. They're that afraid of losing something or possibly having to suffer a little bit. They would just do anything to stay in control.
And this goes into the first definition we can go over. We had a nice 20-minute intro. So we'll finally get into what we wanted to talk about, man. And this leads right into it, though, actually, which is really
Yeah,
cool.
we trailed off there, didn't we?
Yeah, a little bit. I tend to do that. So,
It's
anyways,
fascinating stuff. I did
it
want to say
is.
one little thing because I
Yep.
know someone's going to be like, well, the Neanderthals weren't all bad and blah, blah. And that's true, and we did benefit somewhat of, you know, we did benefit a little bit from it
Mm-hmm.
because we all, I guess, have like a very small percentage left in our DNA, and it actually helped make our immune system stronger. So that's one good thing, you know. It's kind of
Mm-hmm.
like how Blade is. Blade is a
Mm.
vampire, but he's a daywalker. He has
Mm.
all the strengths of vampire, but he doesn't have their weaknesses. So it's kind of like that, you know. We can still take something good from the bad, even, you know.
Yeah, and they say like some of the giants, like when you see some of these giants and they've examined, like especially in Russia and in that area, they say that those are probably descendants from Neanderthals because of their genetic makeup, and they've done tests and everything. And the gene that I guess that they identify with Neanderthal, they find it a lot within these giants and stuff like that. So there's like
Yeah.
certain genes that they've passed on through our human family, which is kind of
Yes.
scary in a way. It's kind of exciting. It's like, why didn't we get all, we, some people say that we've even become more aggressive than we used to be as human beings because of that. Like genetically, we've just inherited that aggression from the Neanderthals, and a lot of people, especially there's, I've heard this from, I don't know if it was the Pan Africans or who was saying it, but they say that white people, Europeans, are the ones, of course, that inherited most of the Neanderthal DNA directly, because part of their ritual was to rape the human women, and so they passed those genes on through the human family. And that's part of what killed Neanderthals. Actually, they just kind of blended in too much, and they just kind of raped their way out of existence. But they came and went at the
Well, that
same
sounds
time.
like some hills and high shit.
They can't. They come and go at the same time.
Taking themselves out. Like,
They're
what the
taking
fuck?
themselves out. Anyways, man, let me get off this topic because I'm gonna go too far with it. Um, so this kind of leads. We're talking about technology and greed and stuff, and we're gonna have objective ethics on, who's gonna be our co-moderator here next month, and we're gonna talk about AI and the dangers and things like that. And part of what's entailed in that, and part of the solution that I was reading up is this is the whole. See, I used to think the transhumanist movement was just strictly about how to live forever and to escape a lot of which it kind of is. But one of the things I've come to realize is that another point to the transhumanism movement is for survival purpose. Just like we had to come together to survive the Neanderthals, we've created the Neanderthals in a way with our AI, is what this how the story goes. And so the AI is going to be our bullies. They're going to be the what we're in danger from. They're the new Neanderthal. But the way that we escape them is we're gonna have to, like they say, if you can't beat them, join them. Which for me, I always say, if you can't join them, beat them. But you know,
That's true. You know, not to keep going back to the Neanderthals and, you know, beating up on them, but one thing I noticed was that one of their main traits was that they were loner types. You know, they
mm,
didn't need to be married or be a be very social. They
hmm,
like to stay to themselves, even within their own groups and stuff. So they were pretty fucking antisocial. And
assholes. They were
um,
just assholes.
yeah, pretty much. And you know, asshole is the new word for narcissism, but maybe, you know, just maybe it's just a theory I'm throwing out there that maybe you know, how we find out or how we're finding out or have found out that the amygdala is underdeveloped in certain
Hmm.
human beings who exhibit antisocial personality disorder spectrum, um you know, traits and behaviors. They're finding that their brain is different, they develop differently, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe, just maybe, you know, that's been going on for a long time. And just maybe that started with the Neanderthals. Because think about it. if we all come from Africa where we had the land of flowing milk and honey, there was everything there, sunshine, bananas, coconuts, you name it, right? And then whatever happened, and certain groups split off from Africa and went up north or whatever. And then they lived under these harsh conditions, right? With the ice age that came about and everything else. And the ice age affected Africa, but not even close to what it did to other regions.
Mm-hmm.
Africa wasn't covered all in ice and shit like that. So anyway, just imagine if you got to live for however hundred or thousands of years under those types of conditions. I can imagine that you would start to, over time, try to adapt to the environment. And over time, you would develop differently, right? So, in order to withstand very, very harsh conditions, we sometimes have to turn parts of ourselves off, right?
Mm-hmm.
We start to dissociate. It happens during trauma. It's a very normal response, right? If
Mm-hmm.
you get into a car wreck, you dissociate, you're unconscious, and you're experiencing any kind of trauma. We tend to dissociate. Now, if you dissociate for so long, right? I mean, that
Mm-hmm.
could technically result in people having underdeveloped amygdalas. It's part of that evolutional adaptation, you know what I'm saying? Process. So I was just wondering if people who are actually born that way, if it's still a remnant you know, of that whole process.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? But that means we can actually transcend that, even so, because the brain is like a muscle that you can train, and you may not get it right this generation, you may not get it right the next generation. It may take a couple of generations to rectify it, but I think it can be transcended.
Mm-hmm. Right. Exactly. All right. Cool. Well, yeah. Like I was saying, I think also too with this AI revolution upon us, um, what they're saying is we're going to eventually end up in a simulation. But the problem is that when you look at the timeline of how long the universe has potentially been around, they're talking about billions of years, billions and billions and billions, 13.7 billion years. Um, and we've been engaged in computers, what, the last 50 years, 60 years at the most. And so you think, are we the only species that ever lived? Are we the only ones that ever spawned out of this universe? Are we the only thing that ever came about? And of course, the most people's opinion is no, of course not. We're just one. We're just one. We're not that special. Like we're not the most special thing in the world. Like we may just be on the lower tier of intelligent creatures that came way after, like within the last 13.7 billion years of existence. And there may have been countless of other intelligent, probably more highly intelligent species than us that had millions of years to evolve, where we've only been around for 200,000 years at the most. So the theory goes that because and because we see ourselves creating computers and simulations, and it gets better and better every year, obviously some other species, intelligent life, created simulations like billions of years ago, millions of years ago, and their simulations are so good that they're probably the one we live in right now. We probably live in one of those simulations right now, is how the theory goes, because they're saying that
Like Enlil
the
and
prince.
Enki, where the aliens created us.
Yeah, like they're saying that there's this alien species, um, and it applies something called the principle of indifference. So the argument that the odds is that we are in a simulated reality, like less people are not simulated than simulated, increasing the odds of us being in a simulation. And that's one of the main arguments for that. And so I'll pull up. Hold on just a second, so I can share this on the screen.
I mean, in just intuitively speaking on that, to me that sounds a lot like idealism still, because I mean I could kind of fit that into idealism and say
Hmm.
that's just what people intuitively suspect, because they may realize somewhere on a very um a deeper level, something that they may not be fully aware, but intuitively, that they're maybe part of something greater or something. Because in
Yeah.
idealism, it's all about everything is that appears is within so-called the mind at large, right? So
Right.
in that sense, that's like saying you exist in some greater mind's dream, right?
That's right. And what you'll come to find out is with a lot of these worldviews, they always intersect somewhere. And a lot of
Yeah,
this, like especially with these monistic type of views, there's always that's where they meet, is this greater thing that we're part of, and everyone has a version of it. And so this is kind of
right.
what really breaking this down really does. So like with the simulation hypothesis, just to make sure I get it right. So I'll just read it. It says in 2003, philosopher Nick Bostrom proposed the simulation argument, which suggests that if a civilization becomes capable of creating conscious simulations, it could generate so many simulated beings that a randomly chosen conscious entity would almost certainly be in a simulation. So this argument presents what they call a trilemma. So one, either such simulations are not created because of technological limitations or self-destruction. Two, advanced civilizations choose not to create them. Or three, if advanced civilizations do create them, the number of simulations would far exceed base reality, and we would therefore almost certainly be living in one. So, this assumes that consciousness is not uniquely tied to biological brains, but can arise from any system that implements the right computational structures and processes. And this hypothesis is preceded by many earlier versions, in science fiction, like The Matrix, for example, that movie. And it
Yeah.
has like a long history. It actually has a mystical tie-in. It actually evolved from a very mystical beginning, kind of like an idealistic thing, where they imagined that the universe was with dreams and illusions and hallucinations, and they provide poetic and philosophical metaphors for people's lives. For example, the butterfly dream of Zhuangzi from ancient China, or the Indian philosophy of Maya, or in the ancient Greek philosophy and mystics like Anaxagoras and Monimus, liking existence to like a scene painting and supposed to them to resemble the impressions experienced in sleep or madness. Then you had Aztec philosophical text and mysticism, where they theorized the world was a painting or a book written by the god Teoti. So these are just different, really retellings of the story. Like Gnosticism was the belief that
Even
reality as
Christians
we
have that.
experience. Say that again?
Even Christians somewhat have that going on, because they say be ye in the world, but not of it, as if there is another kind of world.
Right, right, exactly. Um, so that's what Gnosticism. Those were very Gnostic sort of passages where they believed that experience was like a lesser, possibly malevolent deity like Yahweh that he created like a simulation. and humanity should seek to escape it. And so the whole Gnostic belief was that we can escape the matrix. There was just an awareness you had to have. And once you have this awareness, then you can escape out of the matrix of Yahweh, the demiurge.
But once again, I think that it's just comes down to people intuitively having this inner knowing that there's more to than what meets the eye. We believe in the things that we see with our eyes, but we all kind of know there is a reality beyond that. We may not have all the right words for it. We may not have all the right answers for it. We all have our own little different versions of it. So all this stuff, the gospel, different religions, like you said, they all intersect in certain areas. And it all just comes down to that we're all kind of aware that there's more to it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because it's like the same story told over and over in different ways. And it just comes down to the fact that, yeah, what we see with our eyes is real, but that's not all there's to it.
Right, right. It's like a different analogy. It's like that's all it really is. It's
Yeah.
just they're different analogies on the same thing. And I'll talk about, the critics, the problems that they have with simulation hypothesis that people can point to, right? And because every one of them is going to have some kind of problem somebody can point out. And so with simulation theory, it's the same thing. So, basically, when we talk about a simulation argument or hypothesis, basically what it is, it's an imitation of the causal structure of reality. So we're living in the imitation, but it has a structure that's totally different than what we see. So it's been simulated, right? Now, within this
Excuse me.
simulation is consciousness, and bless you, we have consciousness.
Sorry.
So this being conscious is a phenomenon within the computer simulation, right? But the question people have is, well, if we're all living in a computer simulation, then how do we know that computers are able to program consciousness in like that? Like how sure are we that it's even possible to be a conscious being inside of a computer simulation, since computers can't make consciousness? That's how the argument goes. Um, and so that's one of the things right there. Another, you know, thing is that you have to ask, what does computer mean? Like, what kind of computer are we talking about? Like a classical computer? And they'll say, well, no, it's a quantum computer because we live in a quantum universe. Well, what about gravity? Quantum mechanics doesn't fix the problem between gravity. Is this a loop quantum gravity computer? They'll say, well, no, we don't believe loop quantum gravity. It has a lot of problems. That may not be the right um, scientific ontology. Maybe it's superstrings. So is this a superstring theory computer? At some
I
point
don't
we have
understand a
to.
lot of that. I don't understand a lot of that though,
Right. Well,
and that's just
yep.
like that's a lot of terms that I don't even know what they mean, to be honest. Though I know that you're referring to different theories, but
Yeah,
I
models.
couldn't tell you about those at all.
Right. So I guess the argument that they'd be making really is that you're being arbitrary. Like when you say we're in a computer simulation, but you can't really tell me about the computer, then what are you really talking about? If you can't really define computer, and you have to stick to it, you have to come up with one computer idea, stick to it so we can start building on it. And the problem is these people never really define what they mean by computer, because we, first of all, we don't really have a scientific theory for everything. We don't know what the nature of reality is. This is why we have all of these
Right, but
different
isn't that the same?
metaphysics.
Isn't that the same with any one of those things? Like even religious people, they say this world's run by Satan and then there's a God, but who the hell is God?
Right.
I mean, At the end of
That's
the
right.
day, we're gonna go through that over and over again with all of those belief systems, analogies, whatever theories. We don't fully know the nature of reality. No one does, and that's just kind of the problem with all of them. I just think that idealism is the most coherent because it doesn't make as many assumptions. The only assumption I got to make as an idealist is that we're all conscious, so we got to start with consciousness. We all have a subjective experience, so we got to start there. Where the fuck else are we going to start? And
Hmm.
then the only assumption I got to make is consciousness is, always was, always will be, it's primordial. Because if I don't do that, I'm going to fall into infinite uh, regression. And you can just go on and on and on and on and on. So it's just more coherent to me. I don't have to explain a God. I don't have to explain who created the computer
Right,
stimulation.
right, right.
You know, it just
See, that's
kind of,
the point. Yep, yep.
it just,
That's the
yeah, it
point.
just kind of, yeah, it just kind of eliminates all that shit, because at the end of the day, those are things we can't answer. And so, have you ever thought about that? If there isn't a fucking answer for something, maybe we're asking the wrong question.
Right, right. Your conceptual stage. You got the wrong concepts altogether, and so you're asking the wrong questions. But a lot of physicalists will say, well, that's why we're physicalists, we're materialists, because we meet all of those criteria. So here's the thing about physicalism. So physicalism or slash materialism is the view that that matter or physical supervenes onto reality. So everything is either physical or material. That's just it. So it's a monism, it's a one thing sort of view. So they say it's already more parsimonious than the simulation theory. So with physicalism, they'll use these three proofs. They'll say, well, one, scientific theories based on materialism are always improving. Number two, a complete physical description fixes all facts by definition. And number three, physical is clearly defined and mental is a meaningless concept because it can't be measured, observed, and evidenced in any kind of way. It's just a meaningless
What?
term. Yeah, that's what they say. Read through their thing. So,
Mental
so
is just a meaningless thing. That don't even
it's
make sense because
meaningless.
how the, how the fuck do you come up with shit like mathematics without the mental? How do you
Well,
how do you come
their
up with
that's their blind spot. That's where they've
that?
got a blind spot.
See, that just
They,
doesn't make sense. I'm sorry.
So I went through each one of them to look at what possible problems there could be with each three of these main. These are just main, these aren't everything, but these are the main points that prove materialism enough to where anybody with any kind of common sense, they say, should understand. And
I'm just
they
saying
all
if the mental is freaking what they say, non what
meaningless. It's meaningless because there's no way
meaningless,
to measure,
then we
observe.
should just all fucking be the most primary fucking organism. We should still be like toads and shit.
Yeah, you just shouldn't do anything. So, like for number one, like if everything supervenes on the physical, but the thing about materialism, they're a monism, they're not a dualism. But supervenience in philosophy is a dualistic idea. That's the problem with supervenience. There's one thing that imposes itself on another thing, another category. And so it's usually rejected because it's very dualistic. Number two is, what does physical mean? Like some mean that consciousness is just a bundle of neurons in your brain, right? And that's what consciousness is, just some physical thing. But why should we believe them if they can't really adequately define what physical is? And some will say, well, physics is the measure of what is physical, which is kind of circular. So we've got a circular problem. So I think there's just a definitional problem And so I see a problem with that. They can't really define what physical is, and they always define things against other concepts like consciousness, you know. But that's not really moving the needle, in my opinion. It's really not. Scientific theories are always improving. So what do we mean by improving? Uh, we can't really conclude this when we have the problem of overdetermination. Um, like for example, there's this analogy called Efron's dice, which shows that theories are very complex, and so this transitivity is like an assumption that it's getting better and better. Like, have you ever played that game Rock Paper Scissors?
Yeah, but that sounds like wishful thinking to me.
Yeah, like exactly. Like say, like you could win. Like say, the rock beats the scissors, right? And then the rock beats the paper, but then the scissors beat the paper because it cut the paper and it won. So it's like, how can you say just because you saw a trajectory of improvement doesn't necessarily lead to the rule that whatever started to really progress is the truth? You know what I'm saying? Like, rock, paper, scissors is just a rough analogy, but every theory has its strong points, but it also doesn't do anything to move the needle towards ontology. Like, for example, people say, well, we know materialism's got to be the truth because from materialism, we've done nothing but get better and better and better with our technology and with our medicine. So this proves that materialism is a better theory than idealism because idealism hasn't given us any technology. So they'll always point to stuff like that, but
We
that's
know
just a
that.
tool. It's like hammers. Hammers are great tools. They hammer nails in really good, but they're not very good at cutting paper like scissors are, you know?
Right.
Like there's different tools you use for different inquiry, you know, and it's easy to conflate that and confuse it. And that I think that's another reason people really go for materialism is it gives them what they need. It gives us everything we enjoy right now. Even there's a whole view called materialism where people who buy clothes and nice things and think they're called materialists because they're infatuated with the appearance of the world, and the value
Right, but
that
I
we put
mean,
on
there's
it.
pros and cons to everything, and I could, on the flip side, say, with technology came more disease. With technology came a lot of negative things.
Hmm.
Because before we had transportation, people had to walk everywhere. Now no one wants to get up off their asses, and we're struggling with obesity. And then you could say technology is not always better for society, depending on how you look at it.
Yeah, Japan was bombed by the nuclear atomic bomb, and like we've got all these fast food restaurants, but there's a big obesity problem that came out of that.
Yeah, and
It's
not
like,
only is it causing obesity, it's causing diseases because a lot of this food is fucking. I mean, come on, there's places like McDonald's, they actually are allowed to use a small percentage of sawdust in their fucking food. They use fillers and shit like that. And the food is full of carcinogens because of the way they heat the oil and fry the food. And I mean, it ain't just obesity, it's a whole lot of fucking a lot of shit,
yeah.
that's
And
technology
again,
for you.
and again, just as these things wouldn't disprove materialism is the right worldview, they don't necessarily prove it either. It's just that,
Right.
I can hear someone in the comment section say, well, yeah, but you guys can point to the drawbacks, but overall our lifespans are longer. We've got things that we can do with technology that is better. We don't die of certain diseases like we used to. There's more,
You know, like
they like,
people be saying that shit like it's factual, and it really isn't. Because I mean, you can go to places like Italy, for example. In Italy, people on average live over 100 years. And
hmm
the thing that they have that we don't do is they have certain things that they eat that we don't eat, like olives and stuff like that. And there's some other shit they eat over there that causes longevity. So I'm just saying, not only that, they are people that take breaks. You know, they don't believe in getting up at 5 in the morning and working your ass out for fucking 16 hours a day and whatever else. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
So like they don't necessarily use all that same technology and have very long lifespans. So that's just simply not true. That the only way you can live a long life is with technology.
yeah. And even if you could, even if they said, and we've proven that with technology you can live the perfect, 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 perfect life, even if all that was true, it doesn't make materialism the correct ontology. It just means that that tool has been refined to work within its constraints, but it doesn't say anything about ontology. And that's the whole problem, is that we're looking at the tools and conflating the tools with the ontology. And that's part of the the problem with that argument. It doesn't prove it either way. It's just people like to point to it.
Right.
It's kind of like saying, well, I know Christianity must be true because I feel happy every time I go to church. It's like, so
Or
what?
Christianity must be true because without Christianity, we wouldn't have civilization.
Yeah. Without Christianity, you wouldn't know what's right and wrong. Remember
Right?
that? Like,
God has to tell you not to murder your brother, you
yeah,
stupid bitch.
yeah. You have no grounding. So yeah, that's all it is. It's these made up problems. So they can come up with these made up
With the
solutions. Like, these are
So
never
they come up
problems.
with a solution.
Yeah,
Exactly.
these are never problems.
No,
Like,
you
never
spoke
in
straight out of my
history,
head.
mystics, philosophers, people who thought very deeply before Christianity was ever a thing, never saw a problem with grounding. Like, that's got to be some kind of problem we have to overcome somehow. Like, no, all you need is your experience. All you need is consistency of reality, how it works, and you can base everything you need just off that. You don't need to come up with this, oh, maybe we have a grounding problem. And if we can't ground our ideas, then our ideas must be delusions. And, oh, Lord, what are we going to do? Oh, I know what we'll do. I'll just believe in Jesus. There we go. Now I've got my grounding. Now I'm right and everybody else is wrong. See how neat that works?
Yeah,
So
that's
it's just
crazy,
idiotic.
actually.
It's just
It
idiotic.
is. It's very crazy.
Yeah,
It's
man.
like people be like, well, you should be thanking us for enslaving you because your ass would still be living over there in huts. And it's like, okay, and I probably would have less problems too. Because
Yeah,
with more shit comes more problems. Like all these bills I'm paying, god damn it. I wake up just to pay bills. You know
yeah.
what I'm saying? Like every day of your life, you're thinking about money like 80% of the time. And it's like,
It's
where's the
horrible.
time to be with your loved ones? Where's the time to just enjoy nature? Where's the time to just look after your health? You're out here just grinding, getting money, and you gotta pay for everything. You gotta pay to take a shit. You gotta pay
Yeah,
to fart. You gotta pay to sleep. You gotta pay to fucking breathe. Like maybe I want to live in a fucking hut, bitch.
exactly. Because they've brainwashed us to think that the external is everything. Like, what we've come to understand is that our power as people comes from within inside of us. Within each of
Yes,
us, we have the power to do what we want. But as long as they keep us distracted on the outside, worried about bills, worried about going to work, worried about getting things done, We don't. Who has the time to think about shit like idealism and
Right.
materialism
And
and who's got
remember those times when we were kids and we just made up fucking games out of thin air with nothing, nothing at all except our imagination, and
right?
now kids have been exposed to so much shit on the internet alone that they feel that they've experienced everything they can, and they get so bored and idle minded that that has actually caused the suicide rates to go up.
Yes, yes. A lot of depression. Even this whole Charlie Kirk shooting um, situation, they're now looking at mental health and the situation all
Yeah, because
around that internet.
the way the brain works, you're seeing all this shit online, you're constantly consuming this crap, and your brain thinks you experienced all of that. It doesn't really
Yes,
know the difference between whether or not you saw this on screen or if you actually experienced it.
that's right. That's right. It doesn't know the difference, and that's the whole point, man. That's where when we are able to go inside and work with ourselves and learn how to make our visions real to us, when we have time to really figure that out and build that muscle, that's when our power can really exceed in the world, man. And advertisers, there's nothing in it for them for us to know that. They want us to feel like that we're needy for something. Everybody knows that. Even
Yeah,
if you live in the hood and you're trying to figure out a way to hustle in the hood, you got to figure out what do people want? What do people need that I can provide on my own so I can hustle up some money around here. It's like you have to sort of feed off the weakness of others. And we were talking about that. I was talking about that with some guys the other
it's
night.
called exploitation.
Yeah, exploit. And and we were talking about that, about how in the black community we like to always point out how the white man has, exploited us and fed off us, but really, like Sam and them, they made a good point. They're like, yeah, but if we're gonna really keep it real, the way we hustle up in the hood and make it is because we have to understand, we have to feel that need, man. We have to know how to, deal, you know, whatever people want, and that's a terrible mentality to have. That's what the system has produced. And I was saying that, that's not a good thing, though. That's not really the way it's naturally supposed to be. We're supposed to come together as a people, as one thing, and work together to find healthy solutions so we can all eat.
Not exploit each other for profit, because that's
Like,
really
why
what
do
it
we
all,
do that? And I hate that when
because
I keep
everybody's
hearing them
been
talk like
trained
that.
to.
Yeah, it's like an excuse. Well, we gotta do what we gotta do, though, man. And it's like, no, you don't
It's a
have to do
modern
nothing.
day it's a modern day form of slavery, because in this case money is freedom paper. So the more money you have, the more freedom you have. And that's the thing. Everybody wants freedom. Everybody wants to be free. So you're going to do whatever the fuck you have to do to free yourself. And in this system, money is freedom paper, straight up. It's your
Straight up, man.
freedom card.
It really is. And you know how hard it is to get up money that you need to make just everyday life livable. It's like you have to be so busy out there hustling or working or coming up with some kind of damn idea. You don't have time.
Nonstop.
We don't have time to talk about idealism versus panpsychism. Who gives a fuck? I need to figure out how I'm gonna pay these goddamn bills. You know,
That's
nobody
right.
got time to be talking about that shit. But the thing is, the sad, unfortunate thing is that the more people realize their non-dual nature as a society, I mean, individually and societally, if we could all understand our non-dualistic nature, we would be moving more towards what you're talking about, like where we support each other and hold each other up and build each other up, because then we see each other as the same thing. We don't see each other
Yeah,
as
but
difference.
the the thing is, we have to first recognize what's happening, and what's happening is pretty simple. It's the same thing that happens within like an imbalanced relationship where an empath deals with a narcissist or whatever, where the narcissist isolates you and completely gets you to depend on them. It's called codependency. And then at some point, you are so isolated that you think that you need the narcissist in order for you to survive. So now you're in survival mode. And that's what most people are stuck in, is survival mode, because
Mm,
it's set up that way for you to think that you have to do this in order to survive. And I'm a prime example of that. As a single mom, I got out there and fucking worked my ass off, even if I had to do two jobs. And I was never there, you know?
mm,
And I noticed that shit comes with a big sacrifice and a big trade-off, because you're not even there to raise your kids. And that's most adults nowadays who have children. Them
mm-hmm.
kids are being raised by schools and daycares. You know, you don't even
Yep.
have the time to be there for your fucking kids,
Exactly.
because the system scares you so much, and it scares you because you're like, oh my God, I gotta have a roof over their head. They gotta have food in their mouth. So you're willing to do any and every fucking thing and half killing yourself. And it's not even doing anybody any good, because yeah, you got a roof over your head. Yeah, you got food in your mouth, but your kids have no guidance. You're never there. So now they have emotional issues because they feel like they've been emotionally neglected by the parent. You know, there's so much shit that comes with it that's negative. And I'm saying that there has to be some kind of alternative, a better way. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And that's the thing. The other thing about the brain is it's highly adaptable. So no matter how much gadgets we introduce in our life, no matter how many distractions we introduce into our life in order to cope with this stressful existence, it's never enough because our brain simply adapts to it. Now we need more. It's just like that addictive, like being an addict. His brain adapts to a certain amount of drugs. He needs more. He's going to constantly need more, more, and more because he's on that path. And so that's how the human brain works. So it's not even that hard to get us distracted and keep us there. And no matter how much, and we're always going to be fighting for more, more, more distraction. And it's never going to give us that thing we want, that peace of mind that we really want, because we're too
That's the whole
distracted. We're
point
not
of it.
going, that's it. That's it. That's
If you find
exactly
that
it.
inner peace, you're going to stop participating.
Yeah, you're going to need, there's no need for it anymore.
And
It's
those
like that.
companies ain't going to get rich. Those companies ain't going to get rich off your ass.
For real, man. That's one thing that practicing non-duality has done for me. It has streamlined my life to where it all sort of works together, because it's like, not on for one thing, because I found a lot more inner peace. I don't need cable TV anymore. Like, I don't even watch TV anymore. I don't
Exactly.
watch television.
You get
I
to the
don't
point, yes, you get to the point where you're like, I don't even need all this shit. I'm happier without all that shit. A
Yeah, I don't need
simple
none of
life is
that.
good enough.
I don't need none of it. Like, I live in a very, minimal place to live, which is, as long as it's safe and it's quiet and it's roomy enough for me and I'm at peace, I'm cool, man. I'm just here. So my rent is low. My cost of living is low. I'm living in peace of mind. I don't have TV. I don't have a whole lot of things I can watch or do other than the things I've already paid off years ago, anyways, like my music equipment. I can always write. All of that stuff comes from within me. I don't have to go
Yeah, and
out and get stuff. It comes within, you know.
I think the biggest issue is that it's okay to have things,
Yeah.
obviously. But I think the problem comes in at when you identify with those things to the extent that you don't even feel like you without it.
Right. You
You
can't live without
disconnect
it.
completely. Yeah, you disconnect completely from your own inner being, and you're only defined by what's on the outside, how many things you have, how much money you got. We all need money. That's a reality. We all have to make a living somehow. And I'm not saying people shouldn't have to work, because I mean, even if you were living off the land or whatever, completely independent, there's always going to be work. And I just want to throw that in there because some people may say, oh, what are you saying? That you don't got to work? No, you got to work. Nothing's free in life either. But at the same time, if you define yourself by all of that consumerism, then you're just going to be, it just creates a bottomless, never ending pit.
Yeah, it really does. And we do have to, we can whittle our lives down to what's necessary, and it all works together because the more you go inward to find out what do I really need versus what do I really just think that I need, what do I imagine that I need versus what I really need. If you really took into account all of that stuff and wrote it down, you could really streamline your life, and then you would be saving so much money, saving so much energy, saving so much worry, saving so much contention you may have with people because you're running out of money because you're too busy buying this and that. Now you've created problems with other people. Um, there's just so
But
many
it also,
advantages.
but it just also keeps going back to non-duality and unity between people and working together. Like old sayings, like, "Oh, it takes a village to raise a kid." That's very true, because we're living in a society that if you call in sick or if you're sick too many days, you lose your job. I mean, you're not even allowed to be sick,
Yeah, I
So
know.
it's crazy because people get sick. It happens, and I've known many people, and I myself have done it many times. Sick as a dog, and still dragging my ass to work, not giving my body time to heal. That shit takes years off your life if you keep doing that shit. And they don't give a shit because you're just disposable. You're just a number. There'll be another me. There'll be another you.
And you
We're
just,
just
every
go
person
ahead.
has to take, they have to take inventory of their own life to see whether all that crap is really worth it. Like, everybody's got to go to work and pay their bills. I understand that. Like when people watch this, they may say, "Shit, I got to go to work and pay my bills. I ain't got a chance. I ain't got no damn choice, man. What the hell are you talking about?" But the thing is, you do, but actually you don't. In a way, you can.
But
Everyone's
why?
got the choice. Yeah, and
But
everyone's got
why?
the
Because we
choice.
sit here, but why? We sit here and we trust the government and we go along with how everything is. We quit
Mm-hmm.
thinking for ourselves. We stop cooperating with one another. We're out here fucking consuming social media and attacking others, the
Mm-hmm.
other. And like, what do you expect? What do you expect is the result of all this division? That division doesn't do yourself no good because now you're sitting there by your fucking self.
Yeah. Well, a big hurdle in this, and this goes into the next thing, which is dualism and non-dualism. And like, just to kind of define it, dualism is just one, not two, is what it literally means, not two. And dualism is more than one thing. So you've got differences. And so under, what people like about non-dualism is it's more parsimonious, which is considered a virtue in philosophy. It's less points of failure. It's you're not assuming things that can be questioned and have to have their own explanations. So you're kind of whittling things down to the most simplest base premise that you can build everything else on. So you want to start with the most base thing. And so most people say, well, we want to start with non dualism. So even a materialist would say, okay, that means everything is matter, everything is just physical matter. So let's just start building off that, and then we can build a worldview in a more parsimonious way. We don't have to explain gods, spirits, answered prayers, miracles, this and that. Everything is just physical matter. Whereas in non dualism, or with dualism, you have all these different properties, substances, things like that. So you've got, um, you know, property dualism, substance dualism, and these are just ways to carve the world up conceptually. Whereas a non-dualist will say, well, wow, you can do that. You can definitely carve the world up into dualistic terminology and language because all language is dualistic, by nature. that in the end it all collapses onto a non-dual experience. It's all just being experienced. It's all just one thing. It's the human mind that compartmentalizes things and siphons off different things. Like you've got biology versus physics versus chemistry versus psychology versus spirituality versus religion, and it goes on and on. You can define all of these different things: good, bad, evil, light, darkness, all of these things, all these polar opposites. And so that's the whole idea of duality. And it's very intuitive because that's all we see. We do see light and darkness and up and down and all these things. And that's how we have our language. Like I said, that's the formation of language and definitions. Is how we can define things is through, pointing at the opposites. So it's very useful. Language is useful, and it's based on this dualistic nature. But is that the ontological truth? Like, for example, like, in classical physics, it's very dualistic, you know, but on quantum mechanics, it's very unifying. You have the quantum field theory, unified field theory, where concepts like entanglement and non-locality don't really make sense in the classical physical world to speak on. So the rules are a little different in different domains of reality. So right there, we can see a dualism. We can see like a difference in the way that reality seems to work in one domain versus another. But yet we can also ask, well, what is do we do we are we a quantum process? Like, is this classical world of duality based on quantum mechanics, which it is? Everything is quantum mechanical, at base fundamentally. And so fundamentally, everything would be that quantum field theory, that unified field, um, in scientific terms. And it's kind of the same thing with when we talk about metaphysics and consciousness, that there's this one field of consciousness, and then we are the disassociated parts of that. And this leads to idealism. So idealism would say, there's nothing but the mental. There's this mental category from which everything emerges or everything comes from, so to speak. So everything is inside consciousness, in an awareness. So people would say, well, how do you know what the ontology is of this outside world? Well, this outside world, first of all, it appears in a conscious experience. So what we're building on, what an idealist would say, is they're building on that fundamental knowledge. The only thing we know is a conscious experience. So let's build everything off the thing we know, which is the most parsimonious thing. We know consciousness exists. Unlike the physical, we can actually define consciousness because it's the primary datum to know anything. It's the primary thing that we all know intimately is our subjective private experience. So was that to say that reality is based on our inner private experience? No, but it's based on that category. So the category of subjective experience is a subset of what we would call consciousness or mentality. And so you could call reality a being or a mental activity, and our conscious experience sort of modulates that experience. We can understand, it becomes rational. The universe is rational because we are conscious. And because we live in a consciousness based universe or reality is very easy to understand, somewhat. We can understand reality. We understand the appearance of reality. And we can do things like technology, medicine, relationships. So idealism is based on that. It's based on rationality and relations. That's how we can relate to things. So I'll try to pull up idealism. See if we can share screen, and we can kind of look at just the meaning of the word formally. So we have idealism here, the practice of forming or pursuing ideals, especially unrealistically. That's not the part we're talking about. We're talking about philosophy. So entry number two, philosophy. Idealism would mean any of various systems of thought in which the object of knowledge are held to be in some way dependent on the activity of the mind. Very good. So you need the mind in order to conceptualize anything, even including materialism, idealism, panpsychism, all of these things. Idealism mainly has two beliefs: the belief that things can be perfected or that we should strive for high principles like justice or honesty, or it's this philosophical theory that reality is fundamentally mental or based on ideas rather than material objects. And so it's opposing materialism, which would state that only matter is real. We're saying only consciousness is real. And we know what consciousness is. We can define it easily because it's the most primary thing to us. It's what we know first and foremost every time we wake up, is that we are conscious of an experience. And yeah, and so that's what idealism is. Now, what are the problems with the idealism? The problems with idealism may be with disassociation. Like, if everything is the mind, then why do we have all these independent, subjective experiences within that? Is it within that same mind? How can that be? How is that possible? That seems to be a contradiction. If it's a non dual mind, it's one mind, right? How is the mind separated and disassociated into these many minds without that being a contradiction? Where else in nature would you even see such a weird thing happen? Well, as it turns out, there is disorders. They call them disorders, dissociated identity disorder, which is when your identity is within your own mind splintered off into different streams of consciousness. And this is referred to as DID. Um, and it's a real thing. It's a real condition. And so we see these things in reality. So we can't say it's a contradiction. Um, but how do we? How would one go about showing that this must be the case? That that we're all just disassociated fractals within this, major mind. Well, that's the problem idealism has to overcome. That's where you have to look at the different perspectives of idealism and weigh them and see which one, if any, would make sense or could solve that issue. And some people do go with that reality is like a big dysfunctional mind that's splintered off. It's dysfunctional. It's disordered. We see it in nature. Like the work of Michael Levin indicates that all intelligence is collective intelligence. So our mind is really the product of many, many, many minds within our physical body, and it creates this one mind. But how does it do that? This seems to come to another issue, all of this disassociation. So now we have this other worldview called panpsychism. We'll get into that. But before I do, Sophia's back. So were you able to hear anything that I was saying about idealism? Any thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I'm kind of radical person, and I kind of compare consciousness to, let's say, HIV. I know
Hmm.
that sounds crazy, but I'm looking at it as consciousness as a viral principle. It's a virus that causes a disease, right? And AIDS isn't HIV. AIDS is just the physical manifestation of HIV. And the virus can't be isolated. Once it's embedded into your body, DNA, cells, whatever, it can't be isolated. but it will cause symptoms. And unless treated, it eventually leads to death. That's entropy. And that's kind of how consciousness is. And we know that, we always know to look for underlying causes, except for when it comes to reality. And that's where it just trips me to hell out because that's how everything is in reality.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Exactly. So yeah. So with this disassociation, that's the problem that they're pointing to is that like you've got this overall greater mind, the cosmic mind, we could call it, um, which some say it's God's mind, like it's a very personal, meta-conscious sort of mind. Some people would say the mind is very reflexive. It's kind of like a very um, basic intelligence processor. Like it doesn't really have a first-person subjective experience per se, unless it fractals off, and then you have this disassociation, which becomes the mirror to itself. And with that mirror system, then it becomes metaconscious. Then the greater mind can evolve, and the greater mind can learn and account and grow along with the fractals within it that experience itself. So it's all sort of self-observing in a way. And some people would say, well, that sounds great, but what proof do we have that's really the case? Like, but it seems that we kind of do have the proof that that's the case because we all exist. We all, I mean, unless you're a solipsist, and I guess that's where people can say like idealism is mainly just another way of being a solipsist. But I think with solipsism, you're only saying your own personal mind is the only thing that's real. And all the avatars in your dream are not conscious. They just pretend to be, like your kids, your mother, your father, all the people you care about don't really exist. So by you having feelings about these things, it's kind of insanity because it's all in your mind. You're falling in love with your dreams is what their thing is. And then a lot of people say, well, that's what idealists do. That's all they're really doing without admitting it. You've heard that before, right?
Yeah.
You
But
know.
yeah, it's definitely an issue because you can't it's like it's not testable, right? In the conventional sense. But
Hmm.
I just think that we can still logically infer that idealism is true because it's a concept that we're constantly confronting with in nature, like in reality. You know what I'm saying? Like I just brought up the example of the virus. We understand that energy is not created and that it can't be destroyed, that it just transforms. We understand that sicknesses are just a symptom of a disease. We understand all of that, but we somehow don't understand that reality is not just what it appears as. To me, that's just stupid. I
Hmm.
don't know. I really don't know how else I could say it because I know there's no scientific proof. And I know when it comes to like physicalists, they only want the hard, you know, scientific proof. But that's if you assume that matter is the only reality. There's nothing else, no other kind of layer to it or nothing. But we know that's not true because there's such a thing as metaphysical things and quantum
Hmm.
physics and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
So we know that's not true either. So like we should really kind of open our minds a little more because as long as we get stuck on one focal point, I just think we can't really progress. How would it hurt us to look in a different direction that I feel that we're being directed into if we were just to listen to it, you know?
Well, now this is why here recently, within the last, I'd say, starting maybe about 10 years ago. I mean, David Chalmers was really the biggest proponent of this because David Chalmers was a young Australian philosopher of mind back in the 90s, and he started, to do, talks and lectures and TED Talks and things like that way back in the day. And he
Mhm.
coined the phrase, he noticed as a physicalist, because at the time he was a hardcore materialist, physicalist, atheist type guy, he said, in his words. And he said, but the problem that he kept running into reading all those books and doing his research is the problem always kept coming back though. But how does this explain, how is this really explaining consciousness though? If I'm really being real with you, how does this really, because you're saying on one point consciousness is meaningless and physical is everything, matter is everything, just bottoms out to matter. And he says, but the way that they've concluded this was by using consciousness. So how does that
Right.
work? How can if consciousness is meaningless, then why should we believe anything you say? Because everything you say has come out of your consciousness. So I don't. He didn't
You couldn't even
understand.
believe that you exist at that point.
Yeah, it's like the whole thing sort of collapses. It doesn't really get started very well. He goes like, if you just ignore that part, the rest of it can make sense. That's the problem. He says it can sort of make sense, but you have to ignore that first big elephant in the room. You're using consciousness to explain consciousness doesn't exist. Like
Yeah.
that's so retarded. So he called it the
You just
hard
cannot
problem.
get past, yeah.
Yeah, so he calls that the hard problem of consciousness. Like, how does actually, how does any physical process explain even one experience that you would have? Like, they're totally different things. So much, so much so that we've decided that what's inside of us, what's internal to us, like our consciousness and our experience and whatever's internal to us, doesn't even matter. The only thing that matters is the facts, the physical facts, the physical matter, you know, though that's all that quote unquote matters is physical matter. And it's like that's why we have a culture that doesn't really value feelings. We don't value that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. We value mainly what we call facts. And then even religious people, even Christians, they're always against feelings. Like they're always trying to say it's not about feelings, it's about the truth, this big noble truth thing. And it's like, but if you listen to them, their whole argument for why they believe in their gods are drenched in feelings. It's all about feelings. Like there's nothing that they point to that's an actual fact. Everything is based on a feeling. And it's the same thing with the materialists. The materialists will fight for trans rights and gay rights and people's right to exist and people's right to feel the way they want to feel and freedom of speech and thought and all this stuff. And it's like, but all of that stuff is related to consciousness. And it's the very
Right.
thing they deny. That's the thing they're denying is the thing that they're fighting. So it's like I really feel like it's just a blind spot, but everybody is really an idealist. Everyone is really an epistemic idealist. They just don't want to admit it.
I think that the problem is people, when they don't understand something yet fully, they just downright deny it. And
Yeah.
it's like, you can't really deny subjective experience. Because even if you were to say it's a delusion, like old dude said, Neil deGrasse, whatever his name
Mm-hmm.
is,
Yeah, Tyson.
then even an illusion or a delusion still is a subjective experience. It still comes from the mind. And
Mm-hmm.
no matter what argument you make, it doesn't fucking matter. You can't get around consciousness, period.
Yeah, you can't make arguments without being conscious.
Right. And that's why I compare it to HIV. And I want to read this real quick,
Mm-hmm.
if you don't mind.
Sure.
because I think it just kind of drives home the point, consciousness as a viral principle. When you say consciousness is like HIV, we're saying, symbolically speaking, for one, it can't be isolated. Just as HIV integrates into the host's DNA, consciousness integrates into matter. It becomes part of the structure itself. Once embedded, you can't separate the observer from the observed. Every particle becomes aware of being, right?
Mm-hmm.
It creates subjective experience. The symptoms of consciousness are thought, feeling, and meaning. Matter begins to dream. What was once inert becomes self reflective, and this reflection changes the state of the whole system, just like HIV. And it's
Mm-hmm.
transformative and destructive. Just as a virus rewrites the cell's code, consciousness rewrites physical existence. It pushes matter towards complexity, awareness, and eventually entropy. Because once you know, you can't unknow. Awareness dissolves ignorance the way light dissolves shadow.
Mm.
Then it says, hold up, uh, where I'm at. God dang it. 1 second, y'all. This raggedy computer. Okay. It leads to entropy, but also renewal. Awareness exposes fragility. To know you exist is also to know you will cease. Death is the final symptom of consciousness, not as punishment, but as a completion of a cycle. The energy doesn't vanish, it transforms. Consciousness returns to itself like a wave collapsing back into the ocean. And so that's basically why I compare it to that,
Mm-hmm.
because it just gives it like this nice little, I don't know, poetic way of saying it or
Yeah.
expressing it, and I just think that we all believe in unseen things. You know what I'm saying? That can't be measured. Why would you say you love somebody, if you didn't believe in these things?
Mm-hmm. Right. Right.
Can
Because
can
that's
you measure
inside.
love? I mean, yeah, I can
Yeah.
do things for you physically. That doesn't mean I fucking love you.
Right. You can
I could
lie.
have an alt I could have an ulterior motive and just do things for you because I want to destroy you later. I mean, how do you isolate love? You know,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
or quantify it. How do you do that?
Right. And that's even language is limited in that way. You could never, like, even just the color red. I see the color red. Everybody sees the color red. But the way I experience it is going to be based on who I am, my past, my experience with red. Some people see red and just freak out because it reminds them of
Right.
some crap that traumatized them somehow. Or somebody
We
may
may
see
have a
red totally.
completely different perception of it.
Right, right. And you can't
It
isolate
may
that.
affect you one way. Yeah, it may affect you one way and it may affect me another way. I may say red is fucking ugly. I don't like its bright color. You may say when I see red, I feel love. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Yeah, that's the whole thing. It's one of those subjective qualities, qualia. And qualia is not something you can put in a bottle. It's not something you can measure in a microscope. It's just the feeling. It's a feeling. And it's not even describable. Our words don't are just pointers. They don't even describe what it's really like, because you can't explain every little facet of an experience. It gets so intricate and hard to describe. So for them to say that physical just explains and supervenes, and people use this word supervene to sound really smart. It means they know
I
what
don't
they're
even know what
talking
that
about.
word means, but I know what intervene is, but I don't know what no supervene is. Supervene, that sounds like some kind of superhero name.
Yeah, it is. It's like you're the super cloud over everything. It's like in
Super
idealism,
V.
consciousness supervenes reality. In
Is it like
materialism,
supersede?
yeah, super. That's what I'm saying. Supersedes, and then you got supervenes, which is kind of the same thing, but it's like it's the action of it. Supervening. You know what I mean? Like,
Ah,
let me get. Yeah, supervene is uh, it's to be entailed by, or it's the consequent on the existence or the establishment of that other thing, like the view that mental events supervene upon physical ones. You know, it's like one is overtop commanding another entailment. But
right.
yeah. But anyways, this kind of leads to like you were saying, some people try to say, well, we got to keep looking that we can find, if we look at all the different, at the end of the day, we don't have any science. It all turns into metaphysics. It's not science. So we should keep an open mind and look at all the different things. And one of the other ones that we can look at is panpsychism, which supposedly is supposed to fix that problem. And this is really big in the academic world. Like I said, with David Chalmers coining the hard problem of consciousness. So he became a panpsychist, and he's got a lot of different followers, like Philip Goff. You can look at some of his videos. He's a big panpsychist proponent. Um, you've got all these different. I think Ian McGilchrist was a panpsychist. I think he's an idealist now. Usually the and same with Alex O'Connor. I think he's now become a panpsychist. Um, Soon to be an idealist. It seems like it always leads to that. But panpsychism is just the view. Um, it's a view that consciousness is a fundamental and universal feature of reality, present in some form in all matter. So from fundamental particles like electrons to more complex organisms. So instead of consciousness emerging from non conscious matter, panpsychism suggests that it is a basic building block. And what we recognize as human consciousness is a more complex, evolved form of it. So, this perspective challenges the idea that a completely non conscious universe can give rise to consciousness. And it's sort of an attempt to solve the hard problem of consciousness by saying that these two things came up together. But it's a form of dualism in that case, because now you're saying that physical is very real,
That's what
just
I get
like
thrown off
consciousness.
at, because
Hmm?
when you say that's a form of dualism, that throws me off, because that is essentially what LFM says, that it all arises together, that consciousness already has the infinite potential to be, physical. And
Hmm.
so
Hmm.
I believe it was Joel who also pointed that out and asked me if I'm a dualist then, or that would make me a dualist by default. And that throws me for a loop, because I don't get that
Well, it
proposition. Like,
it 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 depends on how you look at it. Like I said, a lot of this stuff breaks down into perspective. Like from a higher perspective, yeah, it's a dualistic concept, just like
but how
disassociation is,
so?
because all you're really talking about is two different things. So if you're talking about
But I'm
two,
not.
right,
That's
right, right.
saying that
See, well, see, that's what I was going to
if it
say
all,
is that it from a perspective, from your perspective, it all sort of collapses into one experience, one consciousness. So that's the perspective of the fundamental. What panpsychists are saying is it doesn't actually break down into just experience. It never breaks down into just experience. It breaks down into two things. It breaks down into physical reality is really reality, with or without a mind. It's going to exist. So, like rocks and everything can still exist, even if a minds were not true. Like if consciousness just didn't exist, they think rocks and things would still exist fine, just fine. But they're just saying that in reality, as it really is, there's also this thing called consciousness. And we know it exists because that's how we observe things like rocks and other things.
how
But
could
they're
we say
saying that
that? That
And see where the
I
problem
thought,
comes in is they're saying rocks are also conscious because
well, they
rocks
might,
are
it might just be a different level of consciousness. You
right.
know, I mean, I never heard that part of it, that they say that everything that's material could exist without consciousness. I thought that they say that everything is conscious on some level.
Yeah, it's the ubiquity part. It's where they say mind-like qualities are present in all aspects of concrete reality, not just living things. So it's actually like a building block. So the complex consciousness of humans and animals are really just a combination of evolution of the fundamental simple conscious experiences that exist at the bottom. And so humans are just highly evolved versions of that. Um, so it's real easy to see how people confuse that with idealism. You know what I'm saying? Because in a way, an idealist could agree to that, but would also say that that's just an appearance within consciousness, though. And then a panpsychist would say, no, it's not an appearance of consciousness. It's just that that's just the way it is. And we only, but see, one of the problems that one can point
This
to,
confuses me a lot because I feel like I'm a panpsychist, but I'm also an idealist, and I think that I just, I don't know. To me, both things are true at the same time.
yeah,
It's
well,
weird.
yeah, that's all you're really saying is there's dualism and non-dualism. That's really
Yeah,
what.
but we don't, you know, because as a mystic, I already see it that way anyway. Dualism is real, and dualism has its own purpose. But in mysticism, everything leads back to wholeness. We have a contrast to to learn for the purpose of learning and evolving. It's the catalyst that pushes you into evolution. So it's all, it goes hand in hand, like feminine and masculine, up and down, black and white. Like it always goes hand in hand. It's just a contrast, you know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And see, this is why I'm always very clear to say that I'm not completely dedicated, like in a dogmatic sense, to any worldview, because then you'd be closing yourself off in case something else, like new evidence came to push mainly towards a panpsychist view. If you're too dogmatic about idealism, you won't be open to that new evidence or that new viewpoint that may shift you. Um, so like all these worldviews are really just inferences. But the thing that pushes me, I guess, to idealism is that epistemically it's the only thing that makes sense, because epistemically, meaning how you know things, I only know consciousness. I don't know this material world really. I know it appears in my conscious experience as this solid, textural thing. It has, you know, colors, sounds, all of this stuff. But those are just appearances within consciousness. So if I was to make like an argument and say, "Oh, I'm a diehard panpsychist because both the material and the conscious exist," then someone could ask me, "Well, what is the material? What is the physical stuff? You know what the consciousness is, but what is the physical stuff?" I would have to say, "I don't know. It's just something that appears in my consciousness." And then
When you
how?
say it
Then
appears,
yeah,
that
like it.
you're saying it in a way, you're saying it as if it's just something you perceive.
Yeah, it's like an observation. Like it's a perception. Like, and even that perception changes. Like, say we look at matter at a certain point, like the Planck scale, then it stops being matter. It stops being measurable. It just becomes an abstraction at that point. Like, then everything sort of bottoms out into this abstract informational sort of description, which is all just
But
mental.
that just kind of goes back to, that consciousness itself has the potential to transform into what we experience as the
Yes.
physical world. But when
Yes.
you break it all the way down, it just goes back to the unified field of consciousness. But it's
Yes.
all the
Yes.
same. It's all one. There's no
Yep.
separation. It's just all that.
Very
I
true.
don't know.
No, no, no. You're saying it very well because that's the problem I have with panpsychists. Like panpsychists, I think, and I remember there was a debate between Donald Hoffman and Philip Goff. Philip Goff is the panpsychist, and Donald Hoffman is the idealist. But Donald Hoffman is also a scientist and stuff. So he understands quantum mechanics, all this kind of stuff. Really deep, deep, deep. Philip Goff, though, he's just a philosopher. He doesn't really understand physics too much. He just mainly understands philosophy. And so they had a debate, and Philip Goff was going to show Donald Hoffman how panpsychism has to make more sense than idealism because we can measure photons and quarks and fermions and things like that as subatomic particles, that it actually really exists. And so he was saying, I don't understand how an idealist can really get around that. Like, you can't just say it's all in your mind or imaginary. We can actually measure it, make predictions, and see it's come true. So he got Donald Hoffman on that point and tried to corner him. And Donald Hoffman said, "Yeah, but I don't. An idealist doesn't disagree with any of that. The point is that even in your science, did you?" He goes, "I'm myself, Donald Hoffman. I understand theoretical physics." He says, "Did you know that fermions and all these particles are not really particles? Did you know that? Like, what do you think a particle is?" And he was saying, "Oh, it's like a little part of the whole. It's like a little part. It's a kind of like a marble off the greater marble, or it's a part off the greater, like a chip off the block." And he was like, "No, that's just an analogy." He goes, "The thing is that these particles are not marbles at all. All they are is they're abstractions, they're mathematical equations. They're not really things you could
Right.
ever really see in a micro, there's this misnomer. You think you're going in a microscope and looking at you're not looking at things like that. Like, that's not how it works. You know what I mean? It's more like an
Exactly. And
energy."
we just got to get to the point where we don't have to accept that all things aren't meant to be measured. It's this type of thinking that creates this like society where everything is transactional and conditional and institutionalized. Because in order, for example, to prove your love nowadays, you got to show how much money you're willing to spend, and then you measure it by that, or how much shit you're gonna let somebody get away with. If there's always this physical component that we must quantify for something to be true, we're gonna continue to live in this type of paradigm where it's all about the appearance more so than anything else. And it's just like, I don't know. I'm just opposed to that type of way of thinking. It's
Well,
just
it's wise
some
to be
things
that
aren't
way.
meant.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's just some things can't be measured, shouldn't be measured. It's some shit just is what it is. God dang it. People need to make this their slogan. It is what the fuck it is. It is what it is. It is. It
exactly.
just is.
It just is. And right, those are called brute facts. They're called the brute facts of life. Like, some things just are. Like, you're not going to measure it away or reduce it away. It just is what it is. And you're very
Yeah.
wise for that, because one of the things that we've learned, and it's the whole reason science exists in the first place, is because we can't really rely on our perceptions. We can't really rely on that. We've learned that our perceptions can be wrong,
A lot of
and
times we can.
our imagination can mislead us. Like, we can think someone's mad with us. We can think someone has certain kind of feelings about us because we didn't see them say a certain thing or behave a certain way, and it threw us off, and then we get the wrong idea. and we've just concluded in our mind, we know 100% for a fact this person is angry at me, or this person is has some kind of feeling, and come to find out that that's not true at all. That there were other reasons this person couldn't
Exactly.
speak or whatever. It's like our imagination has misinformed us. What they call it cognitive distortion, and it's part of one of the proofs that humans never see reality as it really is. We're always engaged in cognitive distortion, and like even this one lady felt really bad because she had a son who was in a coma, and she was so sad because she would always tell him, "I love you, I miss you, please come out of it." But he was in a coma for like 10 years, and so she just felt really bad that he'll never know that I said that I loved him. He'll never realize that in his life, and it's so sad because I never took the time to say it when he was not in the coma. But now that he's out of the coma, I'm trying to
Mhm.
express. But now it's too late. But that was her cognitive distortion because she had no. There's a wall of separation there that she'll never get through, because the guy eventually came out of his coma, and one of the first things he told her was, "Mom, I love you too." It says, "I remember hearing all that."
Exactly.
Like she had no idea that he could hear all that, and he could, because she had in her mind, she made up in her mind that he could never. He'll never know that, and that caused her so much
Right.
grief. That cognitive distortion is what hurt her feelings. You know what I'm saying? And it's because there's a wall of separation. We need to really understand. We are not in other people's minds, and we're not always perceiving people and things and reality as it truly is. It's like
Yeah.
it
And
cognitive distortion.
wasn't it the Hoffman guy who actually proved through some kind of theory he did where he said that the survival of the species is not
Yes.
actually
Yep.
dependent upon perceiving reality as it is, and that it's actually the species who don't perceive reality as it is that end up surviving.
That's right. Evolution game theory. He said he ran thousands and thousands of simulations of using that theorem, and every time it always ended up with the the creature or being that they're simulating dies out. Like the rules of the game just don't work. Like the more truth you know, the less you're going to be equipped to really handle reality as it is. It's like some people.
And we can
It's
even
like,
go back to the example of the Neanderthals. The Neanderthals were physically stronger, they were
yep,
masters at war. I mean, logically, right, as it appears on the surface, they were the most dominant, they were more ferocious. Their callousness, helped them oppress and trump other species, but they still died out. And what is it that actually defeated them? It was
right.
the unity between humans
Yeah, the hope and the
standing
love.
together,
The
the
love.
hope and the love, the things that we can't really measure that make us human, right?
That's right. That's right. And the facts ended up not being true. So it's like the facts
Exactly.
was, like you were saying, they were more ferocious, stronger. They defeated the Denisovians. All the other species of humans were gone. The only ones left were us, the Homo sapiens, and the Neanderthals. So it was us against them at that point. And Neanderthals knew they could smoke us, because they could smoke us any day of the week. Um, so all the facts seem to be in there. The truth was that, hey, we're stronger, faster, we should go defeat them. Whereas if we would have believed the facts and just went off the truth, we would have died out, because we'd have just said, well, fuck it. We ain't gonna win anyways. We might as well just give up. What the hell? We ain't, that strong. And but somehow we believed and we did it.
I think we underestimate human resilience, which is exactly what I subscribe to the word transcendence. Some things you transcend against all odds, and that's the very thing we can't measure. And at the end of the day, yeah, physically you might be stronger than me, but it's also like that's where the whole contrast comes in at. Because of the Neanderthals, I believe that the rest of the humans developed that type of resilience that they otherwise would not have. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? Whereas if you're so sure of your path, if you're always in power, if you're always the dominant one, where's the incentive for you to evolve though in any other way? So you kind of by default make yourself the weaker species in the long run. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, and that's what I'm afraid happened to us humans because we're not the same people that defeated the Neanderthals thousands of years ago. We're not those same people. I think we're much weaker than those
Right.
people. I think we're people that
But I think
have
there are still
become a lot
some.
more dependent. Yeah, there may be some. Yeah, there's always people, especially with this older generation. You see those people that have a lot more, um, thicker skin, and they have a lot more compassion and empathy. They seem to be more teamwork spirited, and they have a work ethic because they care for their community. They don't want to be a drag on society. They want to be, everyone naturally used to have that kind of understanding about life. Like the world don't owe you nothing. You got to stand up and be somebody. Be counted. Serve your community, serve your family, be a good man. You know, all of these sort of values I came up with under my father, who came up with that under his father, and on and on. And it's nothing new. That's how it just was back then.
Mhm.
But I think that sort of resilience and that sort of spirit, it evolved way back in our human history. Like even maybe like you were saying that our conflicts with the Neanderthals could have fostered that kind of spirit that has survived the human psyche all this long. But now what I'm afraid of is we're actually losing all that because now we have all this technology in life. We've made life
Nah,
so
we're
easy.
not gonna ever lose that.
You don't think so?
Nah, nope. I am 100% sure, convinced. I know it in my bones. Hell no. That
Yeah.
shit. That it's all a matter of choice. You know, at the end of the day, we transcend DNA and all that kind of shit, and we've done it a million times before, and we will continue to do so. I just
Hmm.
know that. And it's just part of the process. Like you said earlier, it is what it is. You know, I
Yeah.
don't believe for one second that consciousness ultimately will annihilate itself. You know, I don't believe that.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It always does. It always changes. It's always
Yeah.
changing in one form or another. Like it went from the Neanderthal form into our form. It's like we're moving towards, and this gets into another theory, like where ethics objective, like because like say like we're talking about how we existed all splintered out into different potential kind of humans like Neanderthals, Denisovians, Homo sapiens, and what eventually won out was the Homo sapiens. We're the only humans alive now, right? So that's moving towards an ideal. Like it seems like it's moving towards like there's some kind of teleological purpose in
End game
consciousness. Yeah, in game,
or
like it
like
wants us.
a,
Yeah, we want to be more
a
cooperative.
perfection, a perfection, a state of perfected, I don't know, evolution.
And see, this is the problem. And so some people would say, well, like transhumanists will say, we agree with idealists on that there is a progress towards an ideal, And what they don't understand is that it's progressing us towards becoming AI. And then the idealists are
Well,
saying,
I
hell
would
no,
say,
it ain't. We're progressing towards being more spiritual. We're progressing to being light, not being computers.
I mean, I kind of agree with that. No, I kind of agree with that. I don't think that it's about being computers. I think it's about the merging of, spirituality and technology. I think there's going to
Yeah.
be some kind of balance there. And while I do not believe that AI in and of itself can just pop up to become conscious, I do believe that there can be just the right kind of circumstance where consciousness could use, let's say, some kind of AI silicone fucking body as an interface, the same way that it can use the brain as an interface. So
Mm.
that's definitely possible. I don't see that as impossible, because at the end of the day, entropy is like the end of a cycle, right? It's death.
Mm.
That doesn't
Mhm.
mean it's the end of consciousness, though. So if we're looking at it in terms of like a simulation, for example, death would basically symbolize the end of that simulation, and then the simulation is recreated, and you try again. And if that
Mm.
doesn't work, there's another simulation until you get it right. And so I
Right.
think that ultimately consciousness is seeking a way to express itself in the material physical experience, without this constant ending and having to do it all over again. It's trying to
Mm.
sustain itself in this simulation, so to speak, without entropy. So in other words, defeat entropy. And I think that's what the Jesus character hinted at in the Bible, talking about he will defeat death and all that kind of shit. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
It's just evolution trying to perfect itself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's just my theory, my little suspicion. I'm not passing this off as a fact. Like I said, I
Well,
think
no, and it makes
extremely
sense.
outside of the box.
Well, it makes sense because why would you want to limit? Who are we to limit how consciousness can express itself? Like, why do we just assume we know better that consciousness can only come in one form, namely our form, or animal form? Like, there could be different ways that consciousness can express itself.
Yeah, I just don't agree with some of these transhumanists who think that you can be here and just use this place as a playground while you're oppressing others and doing all kinds of fucked up shit like, human trafficking and child trafficking and commit all these atrocities, and then you think you're just gonna upload your consciousness and live forever. What kind of word is that? Like, um, you just live, you just live forever after you've been like a fucking criminal of the universe and shit. Like, no, it don't work like that. You have to do the work. Humans have to do the work. Evolution is a process, and you're not gonna just skip those steps and just pop consciousness into existence without fucking experience. Like it's not happening. But I think
Well,
some of these motherfuckers really think they can save themselves without accountability for any of their actions with AI and by uploading their consciousness. But I just beg to differ. I don't think that you would still exist. I think only an echo of you would exist, like your memories or whatever, but you
yeah,
wouldn't exist.
yeah, because it seems like experience if experience is embodied, then it's a complete reflection of that body, and how it processes things. Your consciousness has sort of supervened onto that physical interface, and so it's expressing
Yeah.
itself the best way it can through that interface. It's like if we put your consciousness into the consciousness of a cat or something, you'd be acting like a cat. You wouldn't be, talking about metaphysics or anything. You'd be doing what
Right.
my cats do. Like you'd be expressing yourself as a cat. So what does it really mean to upload your consciousness into a computer? Like, what does that really mean? It's like you're trying to energize the computer interface.
something that mimics something that mimics your former self. That's it.
Yeah, but how does it mimic that if it's not yourself? It's a piece of car. What is
It's
it?
it's
Silicon. It's
it's
like
a part it's a part of your experiences, your collected memories, just like DNA, you know?
information. So that's the whole thing
Yeah, it's
about
just
this.
information.
That's where all this simulation theories come from. This information theory. It's like they're saying now that, well, we know matter, like Donald Hoffman pointed out, matter breaks down into information. It doesn't. It isn't like a little marble, a hard little rock that you can take out of a bigger rock called an atom. That's a fantasy. That's the problem with the panpsychist argument. They've got the
Yeah, it's
whole
like
story
saying that
fucked
you
up.
can it's like you can actually upload someone's subjective experience or qualia, but you can't. You can only extract data and that's
Right,
it.
right. And the data is going to express itself in the form that it finds itself. It's kind of like we were talking about last weekend with the Platonic forms. It's like the consciousness will inhabit a being's form, and it will simply, intelligently figure out a way to navigate the world as that form. It's pretty simple. Um, it isn't like the consciousness is this own person. It's not like it's, oh, this consciousness, his name is Bill, and when Bill gets inside of Sophia's body, Bill starts talking about Bill things. No, Sophia talks about Sophia things because you're Sophia. You're not Bill. It's like that consciousness isn't a person. It's just some kind of energy. It's some kind of
No, I think that consciousness has its own like characteristics, so to speak, or qualities, and we perceive those as archetypes. In other words, there's a lot of Scots because there's been many people like you. They may
mm-hmm.
not have been exactly like you, and they may not have looked exactly like you, but as far as your overall character, there's been millions like you. You know, we've had a bunch of heroes. There's been many Jesus Christ. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's kind of similar to what's it called? Uh, uh, people that believe in that you're reborn, reincarnation.
Oh, reincarnation. Yeah.
It is kind. It is kind of like reincarnation because consciousness reinvents itself over and over and over, but it keeps expressing itself through different things. But then we also gonna see like repeated qualities of consciousness as a pattern. And so we get archetypes, you know, but that's as far as it goes, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm kind of the same way. Um, that's how I look at it because I think it makes a lot of sense to say that we are all actually the same consciousness. We're all getting our consciousness from the same source. So we're just expressed in different bodies, in different embodiments,
Yeah,
different interfaces. So my interface is going to be totally different from yours because I have a different genetic lineage. I have a different experience. I was born in a different place. I have different, I'm a male, you're a female. There's so many different
you're just a
things that,
different expression.
yeah, but we're all the same. Like you or me, if you were me, like if
Well,
your
thank God
consciousness,
I ain't you.
if they could upload your consciousness into me, you would just be me all over again. That's all. It's vice
Look,
versa.
look, Scott. Look, Scott. No, thank you.
You sure you don't want to enjoy all the wonderful qualities of my life?
I'm just glad I don't have balls. Honestly, I would feel so horrible if I had the wrinkled little things hanging off of me like
Hanging
that.
off. Oh man. And then you better not hurt them either. It's easy to hurt them things
Like
too.
honestly, hopefully I pray for you, you know, that evolution kind of rectifies that. Because just I mean, That just has to be terrible. I feel so bad for you.
Well, everything about the human. I always think about this. I'm like, do you know how much money I could save if I didn't have to eat all the time? Like,
Right.
why do I have to engage in this hunger and eating and
I
that
know.
whole
You
process?
really
Like,
get to
why is
that
that?
point.
It's like, fuck, man, this sucks. Being a human is bullshit. It's like there's so much shit. And then you got pain. Like, you understand pain. Like, pain can prevent me from chewing my fingers off, or, it can prevent me from
Yeah, but
walking
who
into.
needs it beyond that?
Yeah, who needs it beyond all that? Like, why do I have to have pain in my elbow today?
And when you
Fuck,
get
man.
old, I'm a woman, and I already got big boobs. But the older I get, the more they sag. And I mean, at some point, when they're gonna drag me down to the motherfucking grave, I'm like, I don't
Yeah,
need
man.
this. Cut them off.
Fuck, man. For real. Like, all of it, like the whole
Gravity
physical
fuck.
existence, it sucks, man. But, on the other hand, a lot of people, especially those who have NDE experiences, say that they chose to, incarnate in this form on this planet to go through all of this stuff so that they can learn some kind of fucking lesson and take it with them to do whatever with it. I don't know what, but
I think it's just imperfection, and we're just in a different stage of evolution. But wouldn't it be cool if we were to evolve into these light beings that eat energy? That would be
yes.
badass.
Well, like they say about these plasma orbs, I always see them. They got more of these
Yeah.
plasma orb videos going on right now. They're going crazy, especially in Europe right now. These orbs are all over airports and shit. And you
But
wonder
see,
what are these things? Like, wouldn't it be cool to be a plasma orb? You're just an intelligent being that floats around
but
and
think about it though. The way we talked about how we're all kind of plugged into the metaverse and how we're all kind of dissociated from like nature and stuff. I mean, yeah, on one hand, I agree with everything we said earlier, but maybe on the other hand, it's also like a sign that everything's becoming more mental too. Like the way we communicate with others over the internet and stuff that we used to couldn't do. You know what I'm saying? Like, remember the times where we had pen pals and shit?
mm-hmm.
Like, but now
Yeah.
with a touch of a button, within seconds, you can connect to whoever you want across the whole fucking globe, and maybe that's also part of the evolution, that we're becoming more and more mental. Maybe we are evolving into more mental beings rather than physical beings. You know what I'm saying? It's a possibility.
Yeah, there was a book out by a guy who's now an idealist, Russell Peters, and Russell Peters had a book. This was before the internet even came about, and he says the fact that we have books, now we have telephones, we have all this stuff. One day we're going to have a computer. Everybody's going to be connected on a computer all around the world, and we're all going to be networked and trading information and learning from each other and creating this huge hive mind. And then he says, and then that's not going to be the end of it. Then that hive mind is going to grow into an even more complicated, complex, universal mind. It's just going to grow and grow and grow and take up more, you know, um, space, you know, within reality, to where you can use quantum mechanics and information transfer, like through non-locality and entanglement. Everyone will be instantly enlightened from everybody else within the hive mind itself. So it's just going to grow exponentially. And this was before the internet was a thing. There was just telephones, and people were like, "Man, there's not going to be everyone with a computer that's going to be able to talk to other people on the other side of the world with computers." They used to criticize them as engaging in science fiction. They're like, even in Star Trek, you don't have that kind of crazy crap. But then
That
look, it
person was
happened.
obviously an actual prophet.
Yeah, he was a prophet, so now that's what they call him. They're like, man, he prophesied the internet, and And he was like, yeah, and the internet, remember, that was just the first step. He was like, that was just my first step. We're just at the first step. We're just now getting into the other part I was talking about, the AI and the hive mind and how it was going to
It
be
it's
super.
Jacob's ladder.
Yeah, Jacob's ladder, and he goes into all that, and he's an idealist. He goes, really, all of this kind of turned me towards idealism, because really at the end of the day, that's all there really is this information system, and we're just expressing that information system. But where does it start? Where does it end? He goes, I think it's just all of it's an information system. It's all just consciousness, processing
Yeah, and
experiences
I
and
think
shit.
it just comes down to that we identify with the appearance so much that we don't want to let go of it. And because I feel like Sophia and I want to be Sophia, I don't want to let go of me, right? Because I think
Hmm.
that's me. But at the end of the day, I might just be some bit, some bit of information. And I think that can be true because when I did DMT for the first time and started experimenting with it a couple times, I had opened my eyes one time and I have pictures on the wall of me and the kids and stuff. And I saw a picture of myself and I was like, who is that? Who the fuck is this
Yeah.
person, Sophia? I had zero connection to me, this version of me as a human being. It was laughable. It was like a costume. It seemed like a costume to me. And for the first time, I really felt what I actually am, and it can't even be put into words because it felt like I was just in the center of the universe and I was just in this womb of, I don't know, existence. And I was still
Hmm.
conscious and self aware, but no longer just aware of this Sophia person. That just
Mm.
completely went away. you know, I had no kind of, I didn't miss it. I didn't want to be her. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It was just, it is what it is.
That that
No
that's
longer
that's just
identify with it.
yeah. You're able to be metacognitive. You're able to step out of yourself and observe yourself and see that it's a construct, and you don't have to identify with anything. And that's the whole mind fuck right there, is that identity thing. But here's the
Yeah.
guy I was talking about. I haven't seen this video, but I thought it looked pretty interesting. I'd play it. So the guy's name again is Peter Russell, and he's the prophet I was telling you about. I'll let you hear from him. Surprised I never introduced you to this guy either, but he's pretty
Yeah, I haven't
interesting.
heard of him.
I'm a clone of Peter Russell, generated by artificial intelligence.
And so am I, but a bit more dapper.
AI has also created this conversation between us, discussing the real Peter Russell's new book, Forgiving Humanity. And I've been given the role of a reader.
And I will be the author. Where would you like to start?
I have to say, some of the ideas in this book really challenge my thinking around humanity's trajectory and future. There's so much I'm still processing, but I was hoping we could discuss some of the main themes you cover.
Thank you. I'm very glad it sparked some reflection. My aim with this book was to present some fresh perspectives on the human journey, ones that might challenge our usual assumptions as to where we may be headed. What were some of the key points that stood out or surprised you?
Well, a theme woven throughout is how the pace of evolutionary change has been accelerating over time. Can you explain why you see acceleration as a kind of missing piece in viewing human progress?
An excellent observation. I argue that accelerating change is crucial for contextualizing humanity's journey. Biological evolution started off slowly, with simple cells, but picked up speed with innovations like sexual reproduction and multicellular life. The acceleration continued over time, and today, human cultural evolution, empowered by speech and tool use, has caused our development to skyrocket. Each advance enabled faster progress, creating a feedback loop leading to exponential growth. Essentially, my thesis is that any intelligent species that creates technologies to control and modify its environment will trigger an exponential spiral of innovation.
And you take this idea of accelerating innovation to mean that humanity is likely a short-lived species? Can you walk me through why you believe this fate awaits any technological civilization such as ours? This directly counters the narrative that we are destined for an enduring future, so I want to understand your reasoning.
Certainly that idea does fly against conventional wisdom. The essence of my thesis is that the accelerating pace of innovation and discovery, while conferring many benefits, also sows the seeds for systemic collapse. Exponential growth means the world is transformed faster than human institutions and ecosystems can adapt. At some point, this relentless cycle of innovation breeding further innovation overwhelms the biological, social, political, and ecological foundations on which it relied. Collapse becomes inevitable, despite our best intentions. So in my view, accelerating progress contains the seeds of its own undoing, making any technological civilization's existence fleeting. Does this make sense so far? I know it's quite a different take on our trajectory.
Thank you for elaborating. I think I understand your general reasoning now, though it's still difficult to accept, but it leads to a rather sobering view of humanity's future, to say the least. Don't you think we could find a way to consciously guide innovation toward more beneficial ends that avoid these pitfalls? Perhaps through shifting social values, improved education, more holistic sciences, or the like? I'm trying to reconcile your view with some hope here.
I wish that were the case. Many people hope that with greater social awareness, compassion, and wisdom to balance our technological ingenuity, we can avoid collapse. But from my analysis, the momentum of accelerating change makes it extremely difficult, if not impossible, to avoid it. Things are moving too rapidly in too many areas for anyone to control. Even with the best of intentions, it's hard to see how we guide this acceleration in a sustainable direction at this point in history.
But suppose you're right. How do you believe humanity should best respond to the reality you paint? It could understandably lead many to despair, depression, or reckless abandon. What guidance would you offer individuals grappling with the scale of the challenges ahead?
No, despair would not be my recommendation at all. My hope is that by understanding the forces that brought us to this juncture, we can relax the judgment and blame, and be more forgiving of our species. And from that place of humility and compassion, we can shift to living consciously, creatively, and with appreciation for each day we have. However transient our civilization may be, we still have an opportunity, perhaps even an obligation, to mitigate suffering where possible, and shine light in the darkness while we can. We are an exotic flowering of consciousness with immense creative potential. Focusing on expressing that potential, however brief, strikes me as our noblest response. Does that make sense? I don't claim to have all the answers, but responding with wisdom and grace seems part of a sacred role we play. That's the perspective I was aiming to inspire.
That's a perspective I hadn't considered before, and one that offers a healthier perspective than despair or denial. Perhaps accepting our transitory nature could bring out the best in us at this critical juncture, even if it...
So what do you think about that? I didn't know about that book. I know he
I
was a
think it makes a lot of
futurist.
sense.
Yeah.
I think that everything as we know it right now, it's all gonna collapse. It's gonna fade away. Evolution just keeps on going.
Yeah.
Simple as
Because
that.
he one of the things about Peter Russell's, he's more he comes, even though he comes from a really heavy physicist side, like he's a philosopher, physicist, all of that, but he mainly got inspired when he left the West and started to enter into I think Buddhism and mysticism. I think he actually lived in a damn cave with some mystics for years, and that's where mainly he got his influence. So his whole thing now is a return to nature kind of message. So he's more like, he sees innovation and this whole progress as the undoing of humanity rather than an evolution like that. It's almost like, it's like he said, in the seeds of its own concept is our undoing. because you get to a point where it just collapses on itself. We get too fast past nature, and nature is just going to evolve. It's just going to do its thing, and it's just going to evolve us right out of the picture. So it's kind of
Well,
kind
but
of
that's
bleak, but
because I believe that's it's not really bleak, because I think that that is true. We don't know how to flow with nature. We keep fucking trying to act like we can rise above it as if we're not part of nature. And that's just the problem with these elitists and this institutionalized reality that we're being sold. That we
hmm
can overcome all obstacles, including nature, like David Rockefeller once said, and it's
hmm
just no, because if you really, really want to be realistic about shit, nature could get rid of us from one day to the next with one big cataclysm.
hmm
So at the end of the day, you got to let nature do what it does. There's no fighting it. In the same way that you're going to fucking die, you know,
yeah,
what you
yeah,
going to do about it? So you might as well just go through it gracefully, like he said, with wisdom, and just see what nature does, because
yeah.
you can't fight it.
Right, right, right. Exactly, exactly.
And I
That
think a
he
lot of
takes.
this
It's a more realist.
technology and ideology, yeah, I think that a lot of these things that we're trying to do, it's just all because we want to have some sense of control. We want to control our future. We want to we it's all out of fear, honestly.
Yeah, the transhumanist says, well, someone's got to be in control. It might as well be me.
Well, at
like
that
E-
point you must think you're God, huh?
like Elon Musk said, well, this AI is gonna destroy civilization, but if it's gonna happen, it might as well be me anyways that does it. So he's pushing his grok shit, and because remember, for years he was warning us about we need to stop doing AI altogether. Like he was a big time proponent of stopping it, and he was like, "Look, we need to stop doing this shit. Stop trying to be curious about it because, but the curiosity killed the cat, and now the cat's out of the bag." And Elon Musk is like, "Well, I'm the richest guy in the world, so I might as well get involved in it because maybe I'll be the one that can turn this thing around." You know, but I don't think many people trust Elon Musk cares much about humanity. Like he's mainly for himself. Um,
I think Elon Musk is just like this person they have propped up
mm,
to be their like prophet of hope, the man
yeah,
who will save us from ourselves and
right.
our wicked ass ways. You know, he's gonna save us all. We know the earth is gonna explode and shit and get rid of us, but he's gonna terraform Mars and he's gonna save the day.
That's right.
And we're gonna give him all the money he wants for that because we need to believe in this fake ass savior.
Yeah, we don't have the technology to terraform the Earth, even though the Earth is already just about there. We'd much rather start from scratch on some fucking cold ass planet out in the middle of nowhere. It's like fuck. What sense does that make?
Living with fucking breathing machines and shit in some little huts and shit, talking about Africa and shit. It's gonna
Yeah,
be worse. You ain't gonna
it's
have
gonna
no
be much.
sunlight. You ain't gonna have, yeah. God damn.
You ever watch that movie? There was a movie with Matt Damon. He crash landed on Mars. That motherfucker went through hell through that movie, just trying to
For
survive one
real.
day after the other. Like every day was a damn life-ending, detrimental situation. He's like, God damn! Every day I wake up, I'm like, I've got to do something or else I'm gonna die. And as soon as he finds a solution to one problem, there's some other little problem comes up that's gonna kill him. Like, fuck! Now I gotta fucking tie this shit down before I fucking die. It's like, no, living on. When I watched that, I'm like, hell no, there ain't no way I'm living on Mars, man. Screw that. That dude went
That's
through
why I'm like,
hell.
good luck with that shit. Like, fuck that. You
Yeah,
spending your whole life trying to save yourself
by going to somewhere you're gonna
and
die.
man, hell no. I mean, life would probably be so much easier if we saw death as a part of life,
Yeah,
and if we didn't treat it as something foreign to us in our society. Because when you're living in fear of death, how do you actually really live? You know,
life is not that important. I promise you, it's
if
not
it
that damn
was, your ass
important.
wouldn't die.
That's right. If it's that damn important, then why the hell is everybody dying all over the damn place over stupid shit? Like they're dying over fucking dollar bills and paper and a pack of cigarettes. People dying over all kinds of dumb shit. Like if it's that fucking
It's
important,
kind
I
of
don't
like
think it is.
it's kind
They
of like
haven't
a
convinced me.
nightmare, you know.
Hmm.
And death, who's to say that death is something bad? Maybe it's just waking up from that nightmare. Who knows?
Man, the way I look at it, it's like to me, life really is just arbitrary. It's not really that important, but it can be a good thing, it can be a bad. It's everything, and it's a gift in a way because you get to experience the universe.
Yeah,
So
it's
as the
definitely a
universe, so
gift.
speaking as the universe, I'm gonna put my universe hat on. I am the universe. And so I would say that I do appreciate being able to experience myself in this capacity. But it's not that damn important. It's like it's going to happen everywhere, all over the place in different ways. Um, it's just that we have
It
within
just
us
may not
nature.
be it. It just may not be the ultimate experience.
Yeah, and it's not. We already know that. Like, we live better than the pharaohs of Egypt, if you think about it. I mean, the fact that we can sit in a chair and sit in a chair in the sky and go from Florida to Texas. The pharaohs never got to
Right?
do that. I did. I did when I came to visit you. I got to sit in a chair in the clouds and fly all the way from my state to yours. And that's a miracle. If you'd have told somebody thousands of years ago that story, they'd be like, "Man, you're fucking crazy." But that's
Or
what
just
really
the fact
happens.
that me and you can talk to each other just like this, but
Yeah,
we're physically nowhere near each other.
exactly. Like there's so much that we enjoy, and there's so much that other people have not had that opportunity, who consider themselves living the best life that life could ever have offered. Like these kings and queens back in the first century, second century, all these thousands of years ago. They didn't have fucking running water, man. Like we have a lot of things they didn't even have that we're enjoying. So, it's always going to be a better, or, an even better subjective, but there's always some sort of experience potential. So we're not that important. Your little life is not that important. Like the little guy who
It's just
lived
like
in,
how it's just like how you go through different relationships and you look back on a relationship and you're like, wow, that wasn't about shit. And you never think about it again. You
yeah,
move on to the
yeah.
next one. Like,
Like
or
what was
you
all that?
fucking see your ex when yeah, you
What
see
was
your
all that
ex 10
stress
years
about?
later and you're like, what the fuck was I thinking? What did I even see in that?
Yeah.
Like evolution just keeps going and going and going, and you realize that shit wasn't about shit.
Exactly. You could say that about any time in life. Like even I could look at times when I thought life was on the edge. Like I remember times and moments where life was like, this is it. We're fucked. Like, we're so broke, or we're in such a big problem. Man, what are we going to do? And I stressed, and everybody was screaming and crying, and it was such a big trauma and drama. And now that I look back at that shit, I'm like, man, I don't ever think about that shit anymore. Like, it didn't matter.
Right?
Like, who cares? It's like the guy who, it's like imagining a little um, guy who lived in, say, like ancient um, Israel, say, like 3,000 years ago, who lived in a little hut, and who all he did was tend to his sheep all day, and he lived his little life of 30 years, and then he died of old age at 31 or some shit. and he had a wife, he had a son, and he had a bunch of cows and goats and shit, and that was it. And now no one cares that he died. He died of fucking. He probably died because he had a rotten tooth in the back of his mouth, and he died of fucking tooth decay. A lot of people died back then because of
Gangrene.
simple. Yeah, and then he suffered, and he died, and he watched a lot of his kids die. Miscarriage, because that was very popular back then. What what does it really matter in the big picture? You could say, from one perspective, you could say, what value did that guy's life have in the entirety of the universe? Like, billions and billions of years later, no one's thinking about that dude, ever. No one would ever remember him. He'd never come back to remembrance, like the Bible says. And, it's
Yeah,
like,
it's
I
just
think we
that,
make too much
and
of
sometimes,
life than we should. We make too much of it because we feel so special, because we all do.
yeah,
Like, we have this reflex to live. Like, we can't, like, stop breathing or eating, or we always have that will to live. So that becomes our driving force that dictates our metaphysics and everything.
right. But that's because consciousness seeks to express itself, and that never ends. But we're just mistakenly thinking that it centers around you as an individual, in this point in time.
Hmm.
And it's kind of like getting caught up in a soap opera. But like soap operas have sequels, and we're just following along with the sequel. And that's pretty much all there's to it. But we get stuck on certain points as if that's all there's to it and that is so important. And we don't really want to move on from that. We want to stay stuck in this one point in time. And consciousness is not that. It's just always going to express itself and evolve. And that's all there's to it.
So, in a practical sense, what would you say we can take away from all this? All of these different, especially the last stuff we've touched on. The absurdity of life, the big picture versus the small picture, and then we think about all these metaphysical frameworks and models. Um, what can we take away from that practically on our everyday life that would be beneficial that you could think of?
Well, I think that it's very important to find inner peace and wholeness, and that people just, at the end of the day, like that guy just said, enjoy life, see it as a gift, respect it, appreciate it. But at the same time, don't take everything too serious because, after this particular life, there's not going to be another one like it. So you might as well find your inner peace and enjoy it as best as you can. I do understand that we're up against, I'm gonna use the word forces, but I don't mean that in like a woo-woo kind of way. We're up against things like oppression and
Hmm.
systematic oppression and things like that. And we can't really always live life the way we really want to. But at the end of the day, we do have a choice to do something. It's not like we're completely powerless. And I think the main thing that we can do is continue to connect, continue to build that unity between humans, because throughout history, with all the things that we just discussed, we find that the human spirit, always wins. And as long as no one can take that from you, you got something. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm. I agree 100%. I watched a really nice documentary last night from this lady. Um, she was I know you've heard of the telepathy tapes and stuff, and she does a
Yeah.
lot of research on telepathy with the telepathy tape project, and also her own research. Like, she's a scientist, and all of this stuff, all these high regards. And she was talking, and she says basically everything just really um, boils down to love and cooperation, because that's really what
Yeah.
everything ultimately comes down to. Even everything she's taken away from the whole telepathy tapes, which you could think there's so much wild stuff you can learn from that and so many cool things you can derive from it. She goes, but the coolest thing, the most valuable thing she's really learned, which you wouldn't be intuitively, you would think it would follow to that, is just basic love and treat each other right, is basically what she's come down to. And so it was very interesting to see how that plays out. And the fact that one of the things that the kids always talk about is that it's not about your plans and your goals and your visions and your beliefs. It's about your experience here and now. And that's where
Yeah.
that's the catalyst for everything, for every direction you're ever going to take. It requires your focus on here and now, not on tomorrow, what you're going to do. It's based on what are you focusing on right now in this very moment. That experience and that intention is what's going to create that fork in the road and determine which side you're going to walk in. And this is how people's lives get better, is when they focus on how they feel here and now, and what sort of love, if they thought about, if I'm going to show love, what should I do right here, right now, in this
But
immediate
also,
situation?
the thing I would add to that is that as we get older, we grow wiser and we just start to get to that point where we kind of disconnect from the drama. After
Mm-hmm.
you've been through toxic relationships and abuse and all that, trauma and abuse and toxicity, it gets old, and at what point do you disconnect from that negative ass energy, And I think that's a big part of it. We get so used to chaos, right? That we kind of get stuck in it, like I said. And we need to kind of get to the point where we're saying, that's just not it, and but while you're young, you can handle all that shit and you think you're supposed to be all in there in the mix and shit and throwing up dogs and shit. But when you
Mm-hmm.
get older, you're like, man, I'm just trying to rest.
Well,
you know?
you have a you have a better, clearer um, map of the territory when you get older. And so you're able to apply
Right.
the love in the right way. Like a lot of people, when they automatically think of, so how can I show love in this particular situation? Oh, well, the first thing people say is, well, I need to fight for us to stay together, or I need to fight to make this work. I need to fight to. Maybe that's not the loving thing. Maybe the more loving thing would be to cut your losses and stop the bleeding, stop the suffering, stop the
I
shit
agree with
from
that.
going
I
on.
think that exactly. I agree with that. I just used a similar analogy the other day speaking to somebody. And a lot of people think that's what love is holding on tight and controlling and not letting go. But love is something that it just is. It is or it isn't. And it's like a boomerang. If you throw that boomerang, it comes back to you. And if you let go, you know what I'm saying? And it's still there, then you have the real thing. If you got to hold on to it and pin it down and control it and overpower it, that's not love. It's that simple.
And there's a lot of shame attached in our culture to love. There's a lot of shame with love, because a lot of people will either say you should be ashamed for loving this person or that person. But the other thing you run into more quite frequently is you should be ashamed that you don't love the person you're with. Like, you can't be honest. Like, you have to say, "Oh, I love you regardless of your faults and mistakes and what you've done to me and my kids or whatever." Like, there's people that will put up with everything, negative crap from people, because they don't want to be seen as unloving. They don't want to be judged as,
Right.
"Oh, I'm not really sure." And then the other person could even gaslight them and say, "Oh, but you said you loved me. If you really loved me, then why are you so mad at me for what I did to your kids? Or why are you so mad at me for what I did to you? Or why are you trying to get so sensitive about it? You should forgive me and move on if you love me." And so they use that, and that works because a lot of people are like,
But that's just,
yeah, that's kind of a good point though. And I know that that kind of did make sense to me a lot in my life. But
and
what
that's
I
also
but
what religion does. Religion
yeah,
gaslights you to stay
that's where
with
I
your
learned it from.
husband until death do us hard, even though he's whooping your ass from day in
Right.
and day out. And it's just that's where we're talking about definitions of love, like of words. What the fuck? How do you define love? You know what I'm saying? That's where we
Mhm.
need to start at. So we need to start at what even is love. If we're gonna define it, let's define it. And according to that type of shit, you're saying that love should choose suffering. And it's like, yeah, suffering is part of life, but I'm not gonna choose necessary suffering. Or love is submission. I'm not gonna submit myself to someone who wants to fucking dog me out. You know what I mean? So we need to talk about the definition of what love actually is. Love doesn't mean infinite tolerance of any kind of behavior or treatment, right?
Yeah, they'll say like
What is love?
the the more you love, the more you'll tolerate. Like they'll try to
To me,
gaslight you.
love is wholeness, right? I equate it to health.
Mhm.
Like love feels healthy. It breeds contentment. You know what I'm saying? Like when you're healthy. When you're healthy, you feel good. When you're sick, it makes you stress out, or makes life harder for you because you're battling some kind of illness. Love is just wholeness, completeness, and all of that. And I think we have wrong definitions of certain words, which cause us to do stupid shit.
Yeah, and we also have identity problems that gets in the way. Like this dualistic thinking gets in the way too, because what people oftentimes do, especially if you're in a marriage or you've gone through what I've gone through, a lot of people will say oftentimes in a marriage, you're only thinking about yourself. Like there'll be this whole thing about, well, you're not showing me the love, but you're showing yourself the love, right? And so what happens is sometimes, for example, here's an example of that. Like I'm not talking about people that are being obviously mean to you or whatever, but I'm talking about people that are obviously just trying to manage their cognition. Like sometimes you need a break from a motherfucker. Like sometimes you need to just get in your own room and focus on your own interests, hobbies, or things like that. Even your own TV shows you want to watch. You want to have your
You're
own
taking
moments.
away you're taking away the element of appreciation when you're constantly on top of each other. Contrast
Yeah,
doesn't need to exist. You know what I'm saying? Because after a while, you won't appreciate it anymore because we're
that's
just
right.
like that. You know?
And and by you suffocating yourself with another person or another situation, you're not showing self love. You're actually trying to sacrifice your own comfort for the comfort of someone else, so someone else can feel better that, hey, I'm not alone. I got this person in my room right now or whatever. And they even feel good. The fact that they know you would rather be somewhere else doing something else. The fact that you've decided to sacrifice that for them, they feel like that's a point of they'll either be a good person and say, oh, I appreciate that, or there'll be a person that's like, oh, see, I got this motherfucker where I want him. I can make him. He better do
Right?
it. He better do it. He better
Got them
not go.
wrapped around my finger.
Yeah, I got him wrapped around my. And that's usually the way people take it. And so when you engage in that kind of behavior, what you're doing is you're not showing love to anyone at all. You're not even showing love to the person because you're doing it out of resentment. You're doing it because you're forced to. It's kind of
Yep.
like you were telling that preacher that time when he was saying, "Well, I'm commanded to love," and you were like, "Well, how can you command someone to love? Like, that's not real love. When you're a slave to another person, that's not love. That's just doing what you got to do in order to survive, and that's not love. So that person that's trying to he's not showing self love. And maybe if he showed, or she showed more self love, she would actually become better in the relationship, would even become better to herself or himself or to others, because you're happy, you're happier, you feel more relaxed, you had your time, you feel like you're moving in life, you're flowing with life comfortably you have your own agency. But when people
Right.
feel like they don't have their own agency, like they have to do it, otherwise the consequences, this other person is going to cry like a baby or something, and you just fit your life around this irrational behavior. Where's the love in all that? Where do we find the love in that? And see, a lot of people say that's exactly where the love is. They'll say that's where the love
Yeah,
is,
I
but
don't
I don't
agree.
see it that way. I don't understand that.
I agree with that either. I think love is like, for example, between two people that decide to be in a relationship. I think it's just kind of a natural fit with a common goal. And if that's not there, it ain't love, because how the fuck could you be at odds with somebody at all times and say we're in love with each other? That's insanity. There's a there's definitely a big imbalance there. Something ain't right. And I think that love is all about balance. For sure. That's definitely part of it. You shouldn't have to fight to be loved either. You know what I'm saying? How do you fight for that? Like, if you either love me or you don't. And if you don't, okay, on to the next. Somebody else will. Because I shouldn't have to fight for that because I respect myself. I know that I deserve love. I also love others. So why do I got to fight for somebody's love? And that's something that I had to learn the hard way, by the way, because I was
Yeah.
also kind of indoctrinated with those same tactics that you just described. And it just causes you to be empty and unfulfilled, and you get frustrated and pissed off because you know that you're not loving yourself by doing that. You know that you're being deprived of
Mhm.
something that's very essential. You know what I mean? Because on a deep level, everyone, I don't give a shit how macho they are, how much they say they're independent. Everyone wants to be loved. It is essential to our
Mhm.
well-being. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So since we all fucking know that we need that, we all need that, just be that, you know?
Mhm. See, people don't understand a lot of these basic ways, and it's like even and it's like you said, it's like a fight. Everything's a fight, and you wonder where is the love in a fight. But it's like for a man, like in Western society or in our cultural society, like men sometimes they have to fight to get the woman. It's so funny. You fight to get a spouse or you fight to get a partner. The defenses are up, so you have to. A man has to figure out ways to impress, to win, because there's a lot of competition. So they have to win and be the man that she chooses. And then once you get there, after all that fight to get there, now you go through the normal problems of a relationship, like all the smothering and all the, expectations, the unreasonable expectations of each other, and the arguments and the frustration. And finally, one of the people, there's always one person more than another, will say, I think it's time for us to break it off. This is not working out. It's probably better if we just cut our losses and stop the bleed out. And the other person will fight to keep it together. They'll know you're not going anywhere. We're not doing anything like that. And it's almost like now that's a fight. So now it's like the whole relationship started out fighting, and now you're just ending it fighting. So it's like, and
That's
maybe
because
in between.
people make everything transactional. We've been conditioned that everything is an institution, including marriage. And that's the problem. Because when there's always a condition to be met and all that bullshit, how is that sustainable? You know what I mean? That's why this shit falls apart. Because if I get with you because you have money, the minute you don't have money, I'm not gonna want to be with you.
Mm-hmm.
If you get me with me because I look like a perfect 10 and have a fat ass, the minute I start aging or have a baby and gain weight or something like that, you're not gonna want me no more. In other words, it's all superficial. It's all about the fucking appearance. And that's why the hell it's like that. We focus only on the appearance of things. And we wonder why the hell we have these meaningless, fucked up ass, relationships.
That duality.
And I just started getting to the point in my life at some point where I was like, I don't want none of that. I'd rather be alone. And that's not even because I'm bitter. It's just when I'm alone, I get creative. I do what I want to do. I do shit that's edifying to myself. I'm not out here fucking getting drunk, doing drugs, toying around. Like I'm doing shit that I like that's fun, like going out on
Hmm.
the lake and chilling and fishing and spending time with my kids, going out to eat. Like I like stuff like that. I don't like to sit there and constantly fucking fight. Now I am a very confrontational person. Now I can argue my ass off. I'm not saying that because I think sometimes it is worth fight. Things are worth fighting for. I'm not saying fight shouldn't exist at all or conflict shouldn't exist because I mean conflict still is a necessity as well because it brings to the surface certain things that we got to face in society and deal with. Simple as that.
Hmm.
But overall, who the goddamn fuck has time for all that toxicity? you
Right.
know,
Right. Right. There's
I
enough
can't.
fighting we have
I
to do.
can't.
We
Yeah,
have
I
to
can't.
fight
I
every
can't
day
do
in
it.
life. Yeah, I can't do it. And
And
that's the whole problem. Like when when you're single and you get to a certain age, and I think this comes with age because I noticed the difference
it does.
between Scott as the young
Age,
man and Scott as the
experience.
older man. Yeah, you just get to a point in age where certain things just aren't as important as they used to be. And that's part of what mellows you out and around you into a more calm existence, peaceful existence. And then when you
Yeah,
even
the
think
older I
about,
get, the more I turn into a hippie.
yeah, it really is like that. And it's like even when you start to talk to other people and you start to forge relationships, I already see almost like, man, I don't know if I'm ready to say bye to this life that I'm already enjoying. Like, why would I want to bring back these arguments and fights again? It's like, because we're constantly going to have to fight for each other's respect and attention and all of this stuff. And it's like, sometimes it's not that fighting is necessarily bad, it's just that it's bad for now. Like, maybe there's a point when you're ready to fight. You're ready to fight. You love to fight you enjoy it. But then there's a time when you're not ready to fight. You just want to enjoy life and be peaceful and not have that confrontation in your life. And sometimes when you get older, you come into that phase of life where you're like done with all that fighting and trauma and drama because you've been there,
Yeah,
done
because
that.
I
You
mean,
already know what to expect.
all those, all those things still have a purpose. We go through those things because we're trying to learn. We're trying to transcend trauma, and we're trying to, we just kind of recreate our own dramas over and over until we fucking learn to somehow heal from it or transcend it. So it's not like I look back on my life and say that I have regrets because it was all part of it, and that's kind of where you find your peace ultimately because you look back and you say, well, I suffered. Well, this happened. And yeah, this was toxic, but I don't regret it because it also made me who I am now. And
Yeah.
I'm able to make peace with the things that happened. And I don't really define myself by my trauma anymore, So, it's fine. It was a stage and it's over
Hey,
now. And
and it makes for great
you get
stories
to
later.
right. And you can use your own story to inspire others and maybe give people pointers on how to avoid certain things and shit like that. You can use anything for the good, even no matter how bad it was. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of where I'm at in my life. I just try to go through life with I try to flow with it as it comes at me. And even if some things aren't as pleasant as I want it to be, I just see it as part of the process now. And I don't really, I don't really let it define me like that anymore. You know what I mean?
Yes, sometimes, like especially recently, I've been kind of looking at life kind of like a video game, like a game where you're always leveling up, and you
Yeah.
have to
And
be.
there's always the fucking boss, ain't it? That you
Yeah,
gotta
yeah,
defeat.
yeah. Right. There's always this thing you got to get out of your way, and sometimes your skills are determined on how well you can see it, how well you can see
Yeah,
past the
it's
illusions.
like a survival game or escape
Yes.
room.
Yeah, it's like I was given all these signs in my last job that were really telling me to leave. Like I could have left at any moment, but because I had all these fears of, oh, how am I going to pay my bills? Oh, how am I going to do this and
Yep,
that?
it's always that.
And then it's always fear, and I've seen the signs, but I didn't have the inner strength or confidence to step out, right? And so then you have to make a decision, and that decision is sort of determining your level in the game. And at that level in the game, I was stagnant. I was sitting there just stuck in this job, in this
Because
experience,
you were
never
afraid of
evolving,
the unknown.
afraid of the
You were
unknown. And
afraid
then,
of the unknown. You got used to what you got comfortable with, even though it wasn't the best situation.
right, and then finally, the guy who's playing my avatar did me a favor and fucking had me forced out. You know, he put me in that situation. I got forced out, and I was thinking, oh, first I was framing that story as a negative. When it first happened, I said, oh, something bad just happened to me. I just lost my job. I just did this and that. So this is going to go down as a negative experience for 2025. So I was going to write that
And
down in my little journal.
that's what we
Mostly
mostly
want to
do. We
do.
see these things.
But then,
But
but then, yeah. And before you even say it, I will say this. I wrote it down. I did write it down. Like, I hit my first snag in my year because everything else had been a highlight. And then there was two. One was a situation with my kids, a situation going on that became a bad experience for me. I listed that as one. And then the second bad thing that happened was I lost my job. But then I started saying, well, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. Let's reframe this shit. Why do I have
right?
permission? Can I give myself permission to reframe all this shit? Yes, I can. You can at any time.
Hmm.
Anybody can reframe at any time. So I'm like, okay, well, let me start looking at this as a video game. So I played the game. Where did I fail in the game, or what happened in the game? And as it turns out, both of those situations leveled me up. They weren't negatives. They
Exactly.
actually leveled me up because they helped me evolve to the next step in my learning, like
Exactly.
especially about detachment. So I learned a lot about feeling insecure because of attachments, like to my kids, attachments to my job. So it's almost like this greater consciousness was leading me into a lesson that I was refusing to look at. Like I was trying to, well, I wouldn't say refuse to look at because I remember me and
But
you
look,
used to talk about it.
sometimes, sometimes it's not just a lesson either. Sometimes it's just teaching you skills, certain
Yeah.
skills that you didn't have before. Like you can be in a situation that is not pleasant because we're going to be in situations that aren't pleasant. But the key factor is how do you deal with the situation that is unpleasant? Do you unravel and flip the fuck out, or do you keep your calm and move through it? You know what I'm saying? So I think it's not only about lessons, it's also about teaching us certain skills that we need. You know what I mean?
Good point. Good point. Because they
Like
give you
in my
practice.
situation, right? Like in my situation, I'm not going to go into it um in public, but you already know that. Um it's something that is teaching me how to keep my calm, how to be a little more strategic, you know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? And it's teaching me to navigate in a completely different way than what I'm used to. And
Yeah.
there's a reason for that. It's a skill that I was lacking, which was one of my main downfalls in the past, because I was like a very emotional creature, and emotions take you all over the fucking place. Because one minute you feel hot, the next minute you feel cold. Tomorrow you're crying, and an hour later you're happy. So emotions are kind of like the wind; they carry you all over the place. If you're not aware of your emotions, and if you're not able to read your own remote emotions correctly, And even if you don't know how other people can trigger your emotions. So you're going to be around stuff that triggers you all the fucking time until you learn how to deal with those triggers without harming your fucking self. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It is.
And so
It's
that's
all
one of
like a
the,
learning. Yeah. It's like develop. It's
yeah,
like you're leveling up with skills that's gonna help you
right.
in your next venture. If you let it. But if you don't let it and you don't learn from it and you just keep on denying it and keep on thinking you know it all, then you're never really going to level up, and you're always going to
You're
repeat.
going to keep running on that hamster wheel. That's
Yeah,
all
and
you're
it
going to do.
sucks, man. It sucks. I've been on that hamster wheel so long that being away from it is like, God damn, I can't believe why. It's like you were saying earlier, what the fuck was I thinking? Why was I on that hamster wheel so long? What was I fighting for? What was I really trying to protect here? Because all I really did is kept adding to the damage. Like I should have just cut off the damage, instead of keep repeating it. But you have these, you're indoctrinated. You have these ideas about what it means to be a loving person versus a bad person. You have these ideas about, what it means to be a man or what it means to be a woman or what it means to do the right thing versus do the wrong thing. And so, man, these things will give you a mind fuck, you know.
It's because we're indoctrinated to just identify with all these things so closely to where these things seemingly become our personality. And that's really not your personality. That's not even a part of you. Like I had a similar experience where I worked for this company as a temp, and the supervisor was just a freaking pervert creep. And he would always kind of accidentally touch me. And he never referred to me by my name. He always called me sweetheart and sweetie and whatever other kind of weird ass fucking nicknames he made up for me. And one day I just had enough of this motherfucker because I'm just going there to work and I'm not here to try to fight off a creep every day, you know? And so
Hmm.
I just ended up telling him, yeah, my name is not fucking sweetheart. My name is Sophia, bitch. You know, like, and then, I get a phone call that afternoon and fucking, the temp agency tells me that I practically pretty much got fired by this supervisor. And, the same day they sent me somewhere else. They had more work for me somewhere else. And it was a much better job and I made way more money. So I told my temp agency agent lady, I said, well, could you give my ex supervisor a message? And she's like, sure. I said, well, tell him thanks for the raise, bitch.
There you go, man.
So I could have looked at it like it was such a downfall, but actually it was a come up because I ended up working at the port authority at the beach. Come on now. I was seeing the beach every day. I was outdoors and that shit was fun while it lasted. And I made more money.
Yeah, I mean that's what happens, and it's just a matter, I think, of paying attention in life. Like when you pay
And
attention to
also a
yourself
matter
and
of
others.
speaking up.
Yeah, and speaking up.
It's
Yeah,
also a
doing the
matter
right
of
thing.
speaking up. And we're taught to not speak up because if you speak up, you're going to lose this. If you speak up, you this, you know? And it's like, no, you got to always be true to yourself without fear because if you don't speak up and you put up with the shit for 20 years, you're going to look back and have regrets. You're going to wish you had spoken up.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And your intention and your embodiment, when you embody your beliefs and understandings, that's when real change happens. Like, it's one thing to say, yeah, if ever a opportunity like that came to me, I would take it. I sure would. Then when that opportunity comes up, yeah, well, I would take it, but realistically, I probably shouldn't for X, Y, and Z. Then you're really not going to see change in your life because you're literally deciding not to walk through that door. And a lot of things are like in my current situation when I lost my job, I walked into this unknown and it's nothing unknown. It actually fell out exactly the way I thought it was, which I was scared of.
You
But
know,
now that
it
what I've
turned out
learned
being
is,
more freeing too.
yeah, now I'm more free. I'm less stressed. I'm still taking care of. I don't have to work, and I'm still taking care of my business and my bills and like all of these things. I really didn't
But you
realize.
are working. You're just working for
Yeah,
yourself
just
now,
that's what I'm saying. It doesn't
which
even
in a
feel
way
like I don't even.
is a
I don't
step
even.
up.
You know what I do from my mental perspective, is I don't call it work. I don't frame it that way because it doesn't. Number one, it doesn't feel like work. I'm just doing whatever I got to do to have a schedule. Like for me, if I didn't have this, it would be miserable. Like if I didn't go out and deliver or go out and focus on drumming up business and something, I would feel incomplete. I would feel like a depressed fucking person. I'd feel useless and unproductive.
No,
But I don't
I hear
see,
you on that because
and so when
this
you're
is the first time
productive,
that I'm like,
yeah,
yeah,
I know.
I
Like now you have free time, and you have to fight not
it's the
feeling
first time ever that I have to be like, hey, money, honey, can I have some money? No, it's always been me that had the money,
right because you
you
made
know,
it.
and I was never in a position where I can get up in the morning, I can have my coffee, and I can just see, oh, I'm gonna work on my art today, or oh yeah, I'm gonna do a show today. Now, hell no, that's not what my life was like. And so sometimes I'm still like, this, I can't do this. I can't do this. I gotta do something different. I gotta be the one that go out there and get the money. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like it's so hard for me sometimes because we get so used to these things that we so closely identify with because we feel like we're kind of forced into it. So yeah, like having been a single mom all my life, I've been a leader all my life. And not only that, I'm the oldest in my family, so in my siblings. So I've always been in a leadership position. Just imagine like being like that all your life. And all of a sudden, I'm just like, I got free time.
Yeah,
I don't have to call the
and
shots.
dude, that actually
I
makes you
get
look.
money. I get money from my boyfriend for what I need. I ask him for this or that, and I get it. And it's like,
Mhm.
the fuck? It's so weird.
It's funny.
But I
My
mean, yeah,
sister was
there are
my
other
sis.
issues with it, but
Yeah, and
it's
it's
just
like with me, I went to like when I go out to my little regular hangout spot. Um, when I was working all the time and doing overtime and this and that, I'd hardly go. I'd go maybe once every 2 or 3 Fridays. I'd hang out, see everybody. But now I've been going, because I got so much time on my hand. I end up, in the middle of my dash, just drop on by the bar and see what's going on and hang out with them and then continue. And so people see that, and then like the other day, like Chuck told me, he was like, "Man, what happened? Do you have like a new job or something? You look more fresh, more dressed up,
like,
more
hell yeah,
you
I
seem
do.
more you're coming to the bar more often. Like what happened? You don't seem like that same guy. You seem fun and everything, but you used to always come with a constraint like, oh, I got to get back. I can't stay too long. Got to work tomorrow. Oh, I'm on
Right.
call. Oh, I'm like you just seem like you could never really loosen up as much as you could, like you were
Yep.
trying. But now you're like you're loose, you're fun, you're hanging out long, you're drinking more, you're being more like. And he was like, "Did you get a new? Where do you work at? Like, what do you do now?" And I'm like, "Actually, I lost my job. That's what it is." And he's like, "Oh, well." Well, it doesn't seem like it. Seems like you're doing better. Look, you got a new
Turn
car
up,
out there
motherfucker.
now. I see a new car out there. You're dressed real nice. You're like, what the fuck? What is that the key to life? Losing your job? I was like, yeah, exactly. Like we were joking about it. Like like sometimes things happen, and your fears were never really anything to fear about. Like you would have been better off. Like if I'd have known this, I'd have
But
done this a
sometimes
long
things
time ago.
also happen. But sometimes things also happen because at the time being, that's what worked, and then you just kind of outgrew it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and you don't
Like
know. You didn't know it was
I
gonna
think
work.
yeah, I think that subconsciously or on some level, consciously even, I made the choice to stay single, because I knew I had to be a good mother. And that came first
Mm,
for me.
yeah.
So working and staying single and just being there for my kids, that's just kind of something that I consciously chose. Plus, I knew I was damaged goods, you know what I mean? And as sad as that sounds, but I'm a realist and I knew I wasn't relationship material. And I knew that I was just going to bring toxicity into the life of my children. And so I was like, fuck that, fuck that. What's really most important to me at the time was raising my kids and making sure that they don't grow up anything like how I did and go through the same bullshit. You know what I'm saying? So I think we just do what we think we got to do, whether it's true or not, but it's just all part of phases that we go
Yep.
through. You know what I mean?
We got to
And
do that.
then you just kind of outgrow certain things. And then when I, practically raised my kids successfully, I mean, they're not like fully grown yet, but I mean, they're almost there. That's
Mm-hmm.
when I was able to say, you know what? I've done a lot of work on myself. I've stayed single. I didn't spread my disease all over the place. And I mean that in a philosophical way. Because when you're damaged goods and you just get into these relationships, what are you really giving back to the world other than your fucking issues and passing it on to others, So I feel like
Yeah.
sometimes we also have to be man or woman enough to say, I'm not healed. I don't need to be out here sharing myself and all this kind of stuff until I know that I can handle this shit. I don't want to really pass that crap on. You know what I mean? So I knew that I wasn't relationship material and I was okay with being single and I didn't feel alone because just like you, I ended up working for myself. I started door dashing and I was
Mm-hmm.
making ends meet way easier than being locked in some prison for 12 hours a fucking day and being jumped by inmates and shit like that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I used to ask
Exactly.
myself, what am I fucking doing this for? This is insane, you
Yeah, you
know?
put yourself through all kinds of
So
stuff. That's what
yeah, I put
happens.
myself
We
through all some of the shit that I put myself through as a single mom was really unnecessary, honestly. But I
yeah,
just thought it was so necessary because all I could think of is I gotta make ends meet no matter fucking what. And
that's
so
it.
when we
Bottom
start to
line.
think in that, when we start getting that tunnel vision, it's really hard to fucking snap out of that. I would be the first to admit, you know.
Well, look, I gotta have to jump off here. I got some things I gotta do to be productive, anyways. Plus, I gotta go to the bathroom
Yeah,
real
I do
bad.
too, though. I ain't gonna lie. It's 12 o'clock already. God damn.
Yep. Well, look, it was a great conversation. I'm gonna edit this video out. It's gonna look a lot better once the editing gets done. And until next time, I gotta roll. But thank you for tuning in. Like and subscribe to the channel. Let's build a community together. Let's talk about it. And join us every Saturday at 12 p.m. Central Time, where we keep on these discussions, and we'll be doing more debates as well. So we'll keep it lively. Anyways, you guys, we will catch up next time. And thank you so much, Sophia, for this wonderful conversation, man, as usual.
Thank you. I enjoyed myself as well.
Hell yeah. All right.